Texas has Class C assault family violence. Now, that sounds great, right? Yeah, we're busting down family violence. Well, let's break down what Class C assault is. Class C assault is unwanted touch or contact and or threats. Now, what is family violence? Member of the household, or if you are related by blood, sanguinity. So if you have a roommate and he has just really been poking you bear, right? Just really getting on your nerves. And you say something like, dude, I'm about to punch you in the face. Technically, you just committed assault Class C family violence by threat. Okay? Why is that important? Because I'll tell you right now, it depends on the situation, but for something like that, I wouldn't want to convict, because what's one of the questions every time you go to purchase a firearm?
Yeah.
Have you ever been convicted of any level of assault family violence at any level of court? So you threaten to punch your roommate in the face, and now you can never buy a gun again the rest of your life?
Yeah.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Two Dudes, One God Pod. Pat and I today have Kyle Stowers.
Technically, I'm Lieutenant
Kyle Stowers. Who's Kyle Stowers?
Well, currently, I am Lieutenant at the Troop Police Department. Been there for about 17 years. Worked at New London and White House Police Departments before that. Got out of the Marine Corps and went straight into law enforcement.
What'd you do in the Marines?
So I was amphibious assault in the Marine Corps, stationed in 29 Palms, California.
So you rode in like one of those boats with the guns in it?
Well, it looks like a tank, but it's a tank that floats. It weighs 26 tons, but it floats. Most of the time. Sometimes they don't.
Bradley fighting vehicle?
No, it's the AAV P7A1 Ram RS.
I will not remember that.
That's okay.
What do they call it for short?
Tracks.
Okay.
No abbreviation for that.
So when were you in the Marines?
As soon as I got out of high school, graduated high school, and I shipped off to the Marine Corps less than a week later. That was 2004. I got out late 2006, so I was in for about 2.5 years.
2.5, okay.
Yeah. They sent me home to take care of my dad because he was dying at that point.
Got it.
So they gave me a full honorable discharge and took care of my dad until he passed away the following year. As far as credentials with the police force go, I am a master peace officer. I have several awards, ribbons, etc. I'm also a sexual assault family violence investigator. I have a special license for that. I am a state instructor for all law enforcement in Texas, a firearms instructor, taser instructor. In a small town like Troop, more seasoned people have to wear a lot of hats. We just don't have the manpower to be able to, hand them off like they do in the bigger cities. So we're constantly busy.
Gotcha. Don't you teach like an active shooter response class?
I do. I teach civilian response to active shooter events, and I teach those classes for free. Churches, any organization that wants them, I come out free of charge. It's just, hopefully, if one person attends the class and it helps them, then I consider that time well spent. I've always known God in my life. Growing up, always went to church. I grew up at the West Irwin Church of Christ in Tyler, and then currently I'm a member of the White House Church of Christ, but we bounce back and forth between there and my wife's family. They go to Central Baptist Church in Jacksonville. Instead of just sticking with one church, we just decided to look for Jesus everywhere. So, But the one thing about the Church of Christ is I know we are known for winning more arguments, but losing more souls with the way they go about it. So I've heard all the jokes.
Aaron Hines said, hey, if I meet somebody and they tell me they're an atheist, I'm like, what church were you raised in? And he's like, that'll do it,
that makes sense.
Because, I think all churches are pretty good at that. And then we talked with Stack about, the Bible says you raise your kids in the admonition of the Lord. And then they'll return, like parents, it's like a quiver of arrows and they send them out. Well, there's this thought that somehow we believe as believers, like if you believe in God, then you just stay believing in God. But most of the stories that we've heard at this podcast, involve people straying to some degree and then coming back. Yeah.
So a little backstory on me. My father was in the suicide bombings of Beirut, Lebanon in 83.
Wow.
He fell 3 stories from the barracks when the bombers rolled in with their trucks, and he had 5 back surgeries, slew of other surgeries, and ended up getting addicted to pain meds.
He was a Marine?
He was.
Yeah.
Yep. So he ended up getting hooked on a lot of different pain meds because, back in those times, they just handed them out like candy.
Just throw them at you.
And so he ended up writing his own prescriptions. He'd go into a doctor's office, steal a prescription pad, write his own scripts for it. It ended up catching up to him, and he ended up going to prison. So I moved in with my grandmother at the time, who was very involved in our church. And then when she passed away in 2000, it was April of 2000, she passed away, and I didn't really have anywhere to go. So my education minister at the church, actually, his wife was a caseworker for East Texas Children's Home. And so they took me in and fostered me. And I am a success story when it comes to foster care.
Yeah.
My foster parents, they were great, still are great. They live up in the Dallas area right now, Farmersville, actually.
Okay.
But my foster dad, Mike, he actually was the one who officiated mine and my wife's marriage.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah. Going from there, I've seen God in my life a lot. My oldest daughter, she was adopted. The story of how she came to us is pretty incredible. What you haven't heard me talk about is my mother, and that's mostly because when I was 2 years old, she took off and ended up having another family of her own. And I don't hold that against her by any means. She and I, we still talk from time to time nowadays, but for most of my life, I didn't really have a relationship with her. But the man she married has family also who reside. They came from Henderson, Louisiana, things like that. So when my mother's father died, Leon, that's the first time I'd seen her in forever. And so we ended up being able to strike up a relationship again. Well, one of my stepfather's nieces ended up needing a place to stay. Mind you, we're not related, but we are related to the same people. Well, she had 2 little girls. So they stayed at my place, which I was a single guy with 2-bedroom apartment. I was like, I've got this other space over here. If y'all need to stay here, it's fine. Yeah. And, even, I'm going to say this little story because it'll come back later. It was around Christmas time, and I didn't have a Christmas tree. As a bachelor, I was like, that's a lot of work.
Same, dude.
Take that out.
I didn't put one up either.
I was like, So, but because there was 2 little kids in the house now, I went and bought a little 3-foot tree, put it on a table so they could put presents, stuff like that under it. They ended up moving out once they found a place to stay a month or 2 later, and didn't really hear much of it for a while. I later heard that she had gotten into some trouble. Both the girls were taken by the state, and one of them went to another family member, and the oldest ended up going into foster care. Mind you, this is 7 years later after the trouble and all that happened. My youngest daughter, Sophie, says, "Hey, Dad, can I bring a friend over from my grandparents' house who run a foster home in Grand Saline?" It's like, sure. This little girl comes over, hangs out with Sophie. They hang out, play, whatever. On the day that I was taking Sophie back to her mom's house, the girl ends up saying her full name, and she was like, "My name's Madison Hope." And I was like,
Who your mama is?
Okay. So I pulled out my phone, pulled up her mom's old Facebook picture, and was like comparing the two, and I was like, holy crap. I know this kid. She stayed at my house for a while. And told my wife about it, and sure enough, 2 days later, we're in foster care training, starting the adoption process.
Wow.
So like I said, God has been very present in my life. In fact, whenever we made that discovery, I called my foster parents, talked to them, and my foster dad, Mike, he was like, "Yeah, God's not talking to you, man. He's screaming at you." He's like, this is a God thing. God has been in my life my entire life, and I have never noticed a time when he wasn't there. It's a lot to absorb, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm just like...
We're mind-blown by all these stories.
Yeah.
By everybody that we've had on the podcast. So, we're a little slow. You'll have to forgive us.
It's been interesting, though, because, you know people, but you don't really know. And that's one of my things, ministry-wise, is work, life, whatever. I'm always telling my kids, like, hey, when you talk to people, you don't know their mom just died. You don't know if they just got a ticket. You don't know what they're going through, And people don't just wear that. They tend to want to hide these things. And when you ask people, like, hey, how are you doing? You usually get an answer of, I'm fine, or I'm okay, I'm good.
Standard answer.
Right. But that's hardly the case. It's hardly the case.
Well, and let me back up a little bit here. My dad, when he did get out of prison, I moved back in with him. This was in 2001, 2002. And I was in foster care for a little over a year. And when my dad got out, he ended up joining the church, getting baptized, and became a Christian himself. And and never had any regressions or anything like that to any of his troubles in his past until the day he died. I am a big believer in second chances, and I think that's one of the things that helps me in my career also is, no one is beyond saving. No one is too far gone. Now, there are some people that they have to want the help.
Definitely.
You can't help someone who doesn't want the help.
Right.
You can try. You can force it at them, but if they're not ready, they're not going to accept it.
Yeah.
But once they're ready, absolutely everyone deserves another chance.
To see your dad, to know where he was, and to see him come out of prison, essentially rehabilitated, and moving forward, that's a huge blessing.
For sure.
My dad, he was an alcoholic for a functioning alcoholic for 40 years. And to see him quit drinking, probably 6 years before he passed away, that was a huge testimony for me in changing me, because I was like, whoa, my dad quit this. I mean, I can definitely put it away. I don't have to hold on to it like I saw him holding on to it my whole life. So yeah, the impact that our fathers can have on us can be both detrimental and redemptive.
Absolutely.
And I think you're a testimony of that. So what was a catalyst event, so to speak, of because, I was raised in the church, right? And went to church every Sunday, but then there was a few things that happened that changed my view, and then I left, and then I came back. What was kind of that moment? I know that you said God has been real in your whole life.
That
but
brings up
there's
the
always
question.
an aha moment. You know what I mean?
I think, talking about, my oldest daughter, Madison, there have been moments where you're just living life normally. It's routine, and then something pops up and you're like, I believe in coincidence, but I don't believe in the coincidence that's that big.
Yeah.
The fact that this kid had been in foster care for 7 years, and it even had gone to the state of Maryland at one point.
Wow.
And then ends up at my biological daughter's grandparents' house in foster care, and just so happens to just come over one day.
Yeah.
That's way more than a coincidence.
Yeah, definitely.
Way more than a coincidence. So catalysts like that, just things where you're things that make you scratch your head and you're like, yeah, that's not a naturally occurring.
Well, you said earlier that you've sort of always, so what you're saying is I don't really remember a time in my life where I didn't believe in God or know that God was with me. Is that what you're saying?
It is. Now, don't get me wrong. There have been times in my life where there's been doubts. In the Marine Corps. There was a lot of times in the Marine Corps where I was like, I don't know. It really challenges your faith. Some of the stuff you see, things you see worldwide, that just, you think, how could a God let something like this happen? But it's not God allowing those things. It is, we're given free will, and some people just do the wrong thing with it. But if we all acted like little robots and did everything we were supposed to, then there would be no reason for a code of morality or commandments. We would just do what we're told anyway.
I kind of look at it as it's not that God would allow these things to happen, but you've got these environments that have pushed God out.
Absolutely.
And the absence of God is really, because we're vessels. We're all vessels. Both sinners and saints, we're all vessels, and it's what you're carrying in to the environment. Not to say that God won't just show up and do something miraculous, but the reality is that I think that a society that focuses on God and that pushes our children to focus on God is a well-functioning society.
Yep.
And I think that we've seen in the last few years the people trying to push God out and away, it's kind of just showed up. And now, the swing that we just saw in the election, I think that's a testimony of what people are hungry for.
Agreed.
So
I think, especially after this last election, the 4 years preceding that, I think everyone was they're getting tired. I mean, eggs are $13 a package.
Yeah.
You know, like all gas prices are up to nearly $4 a gallon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're not drilling, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like,
What do you expect?
what drove you to law enforcement? What drove you to be a peace officer? Like, how did you end up there? I mean, is it just like you come out of the Marines and you're like, well, I know how to shoot people?
I had to kick somebody's butt.
Honestly, I just kind of fell into it.
Yeah.
So I always thought, oh, I'll be a firefighter, or I'll be, you know.
Yeah, everybody loves firefighters.
Everyone loves firefighters. And I get to play part-time firefighter every now and then with the volunteer firefighters.
Being in troop.
I'm a member of the volunteer fire department, and they give me a hard time about calling me a gun toter, and then of course other officers give me a hard time calling me a hose wagger. So
Okay.
But no, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I went and visited some of the people I worked with. I used to work at the First National Bank of Bullard, and when I was going through high school, at the moment I turned 16, I had a job as a bank teller, responsible for like $250,000, and that came from a high recommendation from a lot of my teachers and all. When I went to the Marine Corps, like honestly, I had a great first job being a bank teller, other than being responsible for that much money. Luckily, I was a little bit more responsible than most 16-year-olds. Not trying to toot my own horn, but I would not trust either one of my kids with $250,000. I'm just saying.
Not because they would steal it,
no,
because they would just
misplace it.
Yes,
It's very easy to do.
But no, I came back when I got out of the Marine Corps and went and said hi to everyone, visited, and I was like, I'm looking for a job. If y'all know of anything. One of the ladies was like, actually, White House PD is hiring for a dispatcher. You should do that. So I went, applied, got the job, and did that for, I don't know, a year and a half, something like that. And
no DEI in White House, Texas, huh? They were just like straight white Christian. Let's go.
I'm telling you. And I don't know if y'all know who James Stewart is, but he's the chief deputy for Precinct 3 Constable's office now. He was a sergeant at White House at the time, and I remember when I was sitting in there waiting for my interview, this huge giant of a man who's like nearly 7 foot tall walks out and says, "Let's go." and James is a great guy. Like, he's intimidating if you don't know him, but when you get to know him, he's a big teddy bear. And I'm sure when he hears this, he'll give me a hard time. Teddy bear, huh? That's okay. That's all right. But so I started dispatching there during the day and going to the police academy at night, sleeping somewhere in between. Did that for 8 months, and then got my commission as a police officer, and I was reserved for White House for a little bit, and they didn't have any openings for full-time patrol, and I was, hearing everyone on the radio and getting into stuff. I was like, man,
I could do it.
I'm stuck behind this desk, and if they need help, I can't do anything.
Just leave.
Just
walk out.
So I wanted to be out there in the trenches, and so I ended up taking a position at New London, which is funny because the former chief at Troop, Pat Hendricks, he's now the chief of Bullard ISD PD. He was my chief first at Troop, and he didn't have an opening, so he ended up sending me to New London. Said, hey, train this guy up, and when I do have another opening, I'm stealing him back. Well, 5 months at New London, and I get a call, hey, I've got an opening, it's time for you to come work. It was closer to home, and I said, okay. And so it was just kind of prearranged. So, yeah, when you ask how I got into it, honestly, it just, all the pieces fell together.
Yeah.
Again, a God thing.
Yeah.
None of it was really pre-planned so much by me. I just followed the signs and went where I was told.
One foot in front of the other.
That's right.
Yeah, but you don't strike me as like the kid who got picked on in high school, like stereotypical, like cop. You know what I mean? Like, I went to a comedy show the other day, and this guy was like, man, these police, every time they shoot somebody and they're unarmed, and then what do they say? And he's like, they'll be like, I was scared. He's like, man, why are you scared? You got a gun and a baton and all these things. And then he was like trying to get crowd answers for like reasons, And he's like, come on, they just shot and killed this guy. What are the police saying? And I was like, stop resisting. But that's the universe we live in. You got these people that are just crazy. And I'd like to know what you think about this. I've had some epiphanies about the police. My brother went to the TJC Police Academy and got a peace officer license and then moved to Colorado. Because he didn't want to be a cop. It was kind of like, it was either going to be Scarface or he was going to be a cop. It was one or the other. And so,
let me tell you, you say that, and I know you say that semi-jokingly, but some of the best officers came from troubled backgrounds. I've already told you some of my history. I could have very, very easily gone down a different path. And a lot of the officers I know, there for a while, they were the troublemaker kids in high school.
Well, how did you avoid that? How did you avoid that? Was it discipleship? Was it leadership? Did you just accidentally make good decisions? Because I didn't go that direction.
We did not do that shit.
I was always afraid of letting people down who were counting on me to do something with my life.
Respect of authority. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now it all makes sense.
Because, the old saying, and it's true for me, you can take a butt whooping from your parents, but when someone says, man, what you just did really disappointed me, that cuts deep for me. That really, really messes with me. I don't like letting anyone down. And granted, you can't please everyone, but the people who you care and respect and love, absolutely, I never want to let them down. And if I so much as feel guilty about something, I gotta talk to someone about it. If I feel I've wronged someone and not someone I care about and respect, absolutely, I'm like, hey, I'm sorry, and they're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
They're like, I didn't even think about that. I was like, okay, well, I want you to think, Now, granted, you're also going to have people who feel like you wronged them because you did the right thing. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about when you actually do something that you're not supposed to do, and then you feel guilty for it.
Your moral compass, it's not ethics. We believe that we were created by God for a purpose. And so when you look at like the laws and the rules that we've developed, there's some order here. I don't think that every municipality and every police officer and every soldier all believe that.
Right.
When you see a car and it says like to serve and protect, I like look at videos of police officers in Europe and they're wearing like chartreuse safety jackets and their cars are painted like neon yellow. Right. When I go through White House, Texas, the fire truck is black on black. The police officers are black on black. And I resent that.
Yeah.
I'm not breaking any laws, not on purpose. I mean, I allegedly was going 86 coming through Henderson or whatever the other day, and your little buddy gave me a ticket, which is in Precinct 3, I think, which is hilarious,
Good old ARP.
But it's like, ARP, that's where it was, not Henderson. I had left Henderson.
Yep.
Okay?
64, they'll always get you.
Yeah.
Always.
Well, I mean, it's a great road. I don't understand why they have to put a speed trap there, So, like, I get this feeling like cops are just road pirates, because I haven't been in a major accident. I haven't caused an accident. You know what I mean? So, like, I struggle with some of this, right? So, like, this is a human thing. Mm-hmm. I get it that y'all are there allegedly to serve and protect. But the gun you carry is first and foremost for your protection, not for protection of me or some kid or, And so then I start thinking about it, and I'm like, these guys are like guys that got picked on in high school. They're just driving around in a car with a shotgun and a
patrol rifle,
rifle, and a pistol and pepper spray and an electrocution device just to make sure I wear my seatbelt.
Taser. Shout out.
In the name of safety, public safety. Pull me over, fine me for not wearing a seatbelt. And I resent that.
I think that's fair, but on the other end of that, we have worked so many accidents, and all it takes is one. I actually worked an accident, this was 10, 12 years ago. 18-year-old kid.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in a brand new Ford F-350. He clipped a tree, went on its side, and because he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, it launched him into the passenger side, caught his head between the door and the seat, and that's what killed him. Mm-hmm. If he had been wearing his seatbelt, he probably would have walked away with. Now,
what do you think really killed that kid, though? You think affluenza killed him? Like he was just driving in a brand new F-350, thought he was God or something?
No, I think that he was a kid and he made a mistake, veered off the road, and unfortunately, because he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, that was the one thing that could have saved him.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I hear it, but I'm like, pull me over and go, hey, man, you should really be wearing your seatbelt. I choose not to, bud. Have a nice day.
What are we doing? In Troop, all of our patrol vehicles are white with our, graphics.
Yeah, Troop is definitely better than White House.
Definitely. They stand out.
If you're undercover or something, then drive around in a personal vehicle and look undercover. But why you got to hide?
Let me ask you this. You get called to a disturbance, and let's say there's a few people fighting in the yard, and you're waiting for another unit to show up so that you don't get your own butt beat, right? Mm-hmm. Is my white truck going to stand out more when I cruise up without any lights on, or is that blacked out car going to stand out more?
Man, I don't know. I can't answer that. I've been in some fights before, and I can tell you that I sure wasn't paying attention to any vehicles that were coming. You know what I mean? I was trying to take care of business,
Oh, there have been times, though, when, like, I've shown up and there's 50 to 100 people there, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to sit here for a minute, and they'll be just talking straight smack, and I'm like, no, I'll be there in a minute. You're not going to do something? Oh, I'm going to do something. I'm just not going to do it alone.
I need my friends. You got your friends. I need my friends.
Well, we got a cat that goes to church with us. He's a officer of the law. Or maybe that's broad enough, right? Yeah. He takes jiu-jitsu, and I was talking to him, and he goes, dude, more officers need to take that. Disparity of force is a thing, like somebody pulls a knife and probably not going to be like, judo chop, you know what I mean? Probably about to get some lead your direction.
Yeah.
But nationwide, I'm not talking about Smith County or Tyler, Texas, or Troop or whatever, but like you just see these reports and you're like, either A, why didn't the cops intervene faster? And there's probably some reasons that nobody tells us. Or B, why did they think that was an appropriate level of force?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I can tell you that there's a lot of agencies with policies, and Troop is one of them. Our policy is we do not respond to a disturbance by ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
If you respond to a disturbance by yourself without another unit, chances are you're going to get written up.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is there have been too many times where we've worked a disturbance where, guy is jumping up on his wife, and then we show up, we put him on the ground, and then wife's like, no, I love him. And then takes a frying pan to the back of your head.
Yeah.
So and it's just so unpredictable, especially
but like if a call came out and they're like, yo, they're shooting up Troop Elementary.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to go through the door.
Yeah.
You aren't going to wait like they did.
Right. And our policy does allow for officer discretion that says, hey, if it's extenuating circumstances, let's say the same situation I just mentioned, but now the wife's pregnant. Okay, if he's beating up on a pregnant woman, I'm not waiting on another unit.
Yeah, dude.
If it's two people fist fighting in the yard, okay.
Let them beat each other up. Yeah. I probably watch 5 hours of videos a week of just like people's interaction with the cops. I think it's great.
Well, and that's the thing.
Cops are like, hey, you can't record me. I'm like, bro, you don't know that?
Dude, I love it. I love it when people are like, I'm recording you. Cool, man. I'm recording you too.
Nice to meet you.
Sweet. Let me check my eyebrows so I look good on camera here.
Okay. So some of the cops on those videos I watch, they're like, I'm glad you're doing it. You have a right to do it.
Yes.
And so one of my big soapbox deals is like, if you don't exercise your rights, then the government will find a reason why you don't need them.
Not on the local level.
Well, and I'll get with you on that. Like when COVID happened, our mayor, our sheriff, people were like, hey man, probably not going to close down Tyler, Texas here.
Well, and speaking of the COVID thing, because I was one of those essential workers.
Yeah.
Same.
And,
You're out there stopping people. Hey, ma'am, you need to put your mask back on while you're driving your car.
I was not. I do remember seeing this video of this cop, and you could tell he was probably working off-duty security at some ball game.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, hey, you need to put your mask on. They're going to kick you out. And she starts throwing a fit about it. He's like, all right. He's like, well, then you got to go. They're wanting you criminally trespassed if you're not going to wear a mask. And she starts fighting, and so he ends up having to tase her. And I remember the internet losing their minds about cop tases woman for not wearing a mask. I was like, no, he tased her because she was refusing to leave after being warned of a criminal trespass situation. It wasn't because that might have been what started it, but that's not what the end result was. And in my head, I was like, man, that poor guy is just like, man, I'm just here trying to make an extra buck, and
I'm trying to get some extra hours because that's the way football games work.
It is,
you get extra.
But why do they get to wear their uniform? I don't ever understand this. Like, you'll see, there'll be people, like used to, back when things were open 24 hours, like back in the day, you could go to a Whataburger, and there'd be like a sheriff's deputy dressed as a sheriff's deputy, just like chilling, drinking coffee at Whataburger at 3 a.m, and I would always be like, hey, bud, And then they're like, oh, no, I'm working security. I'm like, security? People are just eating hamburgers up in here, like.
You'd be surprised.
You would be surprised. Says, I used to work, that's actually how I met my wife, by the way. I was working.
Oh, we need to hear this story. We got to hear this one, bro.
So my wife was working night shift at the Caldwell Zoo.
They have a night shift? They open it at night?
No,
It's
no,
not
no.
open.
Oh.
But
There's a lot of stuff going on.
The
They got
night shift crew
Yeah.
is who makes sure all the animals are put up into their pens,
Okay.
have their nighttime food. They're getting stuff ready for the next day.
half the animals there are like nocturnal.
Oh, that's true.
Dude, I got to tell you though, that was one of the coolest experiences.
You got to go at night.
I would take her food at night,
Oh, yeah.
and I could probably say this now that she no longer works there. But yeah, I got to pet a rhinoceros, man.
Yeah.
No, I didn't get in the pen with it.
Okay.
But this
okay.
particular rhinoceros, his name was Phineas, and he's no
Phineas.
longer there. He was transferred to another zoo. But
Yeah, he was
Phineas,
acting bad.
Phineas the rhino was like he was a little temperamental about men, and so he would either like charge the gate or just come up to you. And so they were like, "Hey, man, be careful with Phineas. You never know with a dude because he's kind of picky." Dude, this rhino comes up, kind of sniffs me a little bit, and mind you, I'm behind these giant, like 5-inch steel pipe,
Concrete.
concrete.
Yeah.
So I wasn't too worried about it, and
Shoot.
so I just kind of put my hand out and like rub his nose, and he's like, "Okay, that's cool." And then he turns his head. I got to rub his ear. That was cool. And then he just like his whole body slams up against the bars, and he's like, "All right, scratch my back."
Belly.
And so I got to
Really?
pet a freaking rhinoceros, man.
That's awesome. dude.
That's a good story because did we talk about it on the podcast about the unicorns?
Yeah. No, we didn't talk about it on the podcast.
We talking about there's unicorns in the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And then when you look at like the definitions, because you're like, where's unicorns? Well, like
Rhino.
rhino.
Yeah.
There was a one and a two-horned rhino, and the one-horned rhino was also in the dictionary as a unicorn.
Yeah. And the name for rhinoceros wasn't invented until like the 1860s or
Yeah.
something like that.
I didn't
So
know
it was
that.
always known as a unicorn up until the 1860s, whenever
That's cool.
Darwin's theory was being.
Yeah, dude, I think there's this
perpetuated and all
huge
that.
conspiracy that's trying to like invalidate the Bible, which is wild. Like the
agree
amount
with
of
that.
people that it goes through and
Well, I can also tell you that the bears at the zoo really like peanuts.
huh.
But you don't want to stick your hand in the cage, so you put the peanuts in your hand, and then you just hold the palm of your hand against the cage, and they'll lick it out of your hand.
I still would
Yeah, I'm
even
out.
struggle with that.
No,
one.
the cage. So the grating in the cage was small enough. That they can't bite through
Gotcha,
it.
yeah,
but they can
yeah.
just get their tongue through it.
Okay,
yeah,
hold
it was
on,
like
hold
a
on.
chain link fence.
So, would you rather your kids be stuck in the woods with a random man or a random bear?
Probably a random man, because
It's controversial.
it depends if the bear has been,
Yeah.
socialized with humans
When's
or
the
not.
last time the bear ate?
Fed.
If it's hungry, it's going to see nothing but, hey, I'm going to eat that little thing right there. That little tiny human looks like it tastes amazing, I'm sure.
I just think it's an important question. I haven't asked anybody on the podcast,
No.
but I've asked women in my life, my daughter, my wife, people I know at church or whatever, and I've shockingly gotten the bear answer
Really?
from people that I know. And it's all back to their prior experience,
Well, and
they've had a bad experience. A guy's taken advantage of them. A guy's hurt them, and so in their mind, they're like, "Well, the random guy could be that." And I'm like, "Yeah, but 99% of your
Could be,
life,
but
like,
majority are not.
yeah, if you were walking down the street in Troop, Texas, and there was a guy on the sidewalk, you wouldn't go, a guy, and start running.
Right.
But if
No.
there was a bear, you'd be like, nope.
I'm out.
There's definitely
Yeah.
a problem.
But so to me, it's interesting and applicable because, like you said, you're all about second chances.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not third and fifth and eighth chances.
It depends.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I wanted you to say. So my
Officer's
deal
discretion.
is God can redeem things.
Dude,
So in God's hands, there is nothing that can't be redeemed.
I've had people that
Frequent flyers?
Yeah, yeah. That's actually what I call them. Like,
Yeah.
it's a frequent flyer. But I've had people that I've arrested numerous times. There was one guy I arrested twice in one night. He almost beat me back from the jail.
How do you get arrested twice in a night?
Make bail.
You make bail, you come back, and then you do something stupid again.
Yeah.
But there are some people that I've arrested so many different times, and then one day I'm walking through Walmart with my family, and you hear the infamous, "What's up, boss man?" It's something you never want to hear when you're with your family, because typically that's jail talk.
Yeah.
You'll turn around, I'm like, "Man, do I know you?" And he's like, yeah, you arrested me, so many years ago for this and that. What's your name? And he'll tell me, and I'm like, dude, I didn't even recognize you. Like, he turned his life around, got rid of the, I'm going to say it, meth monkey look.
Yeah.
And looks like a decent human being. And would never have guessed that that's who it was, On the other end of that, I've seen people that was a friend for years, totally stand-up kind of person, went down the wrong path, and when you see him 10 years later, you're like,
Meth monkey.
dude, what happened to you? So the whole 8th, 9th, 10th chances, it really all just depends on where they are in their life and if they want help.
Yeah.
If they want help, I've had people come up to me with drugs and be like, hey, I'm trying to get rid of this. I'm not going to charge you with it.
Right.
You brought it to me.
Yeah.
That's now found property. It's going to evidence. You ain't getting it back.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Definitely.
let's get you to a rehab center.
Yeah, so I think that there are more police officers in our country that have that attitude than there are the ones that make the news for the crazy
Oh,
stuff.
for sure.
Yeah.
You're talking about the tiniest of percentages. But, I mean, it doesn't just stop with police officers. It also goes doctors. How many doctors have been sued for malpractice?
Yeah.
How many doctors have messed up and killed their patient? Every single career field is going to have a percentage of people who screw up.
Yeah.
Yeah, somehow police, I guess because of our authority, I hate using that word because we only have so much authority, and the authority given to us is granted by the Constitution of both the U.S. and the state governments, but it's not absolute.
Yeah.
We don't have total autonomy and just freedom to just go around doing whatever we want,
But you do have officer discretion, and I've been on
You do.
the positive and negative side of that in my life.
I've experienced the positive and the negative end on that.
I mean, I've never been in handcuffs or anything, but I probably should have. I
Well,
guess
and
is what I'm saying.
I'm a field training officer. We had a big changeover a couple years ago, so currently I am. Oh no, we have 2 field training officers on the streets right now. I'm the lead field training officer, and one thing I tell all of my new guys: listen, just because the law says you can do something doesn't always mean you should do something. Because the law, when you put something in black and white, there's a lot of room for error. I'm sorry. Let me back up because you asked about the story how I met my wife.
Yeah, I was about to
Sorry.
Yeah.
So I had to run off because I'm an animal lover, and so I was like, zoo.
Yeah.
But no, so
He's better at staying on topic than I am.
so whenever I was working on my weekends off, I would work security at Whataburger. And I'm telling you, and one of the Whataburgers I worked security was Gentry Parkway.
Okay, and that's by the zoo.
Tyler,
I got you.
And so I was sitting in at the time, my 03 red Dodge pickup, and mind you, we had a lot of gang activity would show up to that Whataburger at night. The clubs would let out at midnight, 1, 2 in the morning, and we would get 300 people there that had just been partying all night.
And hungry.
And usually it started into a fight somewhere, people getting mad at each other. Well, I'm sitting there, and this was at one of the points in the time where there wasn't a whole lot of traffic in and out. And this car pulls into a handicap spot. And I'm like, it's going to make me work. All right. So I get out, and I'm like, ma'am, I need to see your handicap placard. And she's like, do what? So you parked in a handicap spot. You either move your car or you show me your handicap placard. Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay. That was it. 2 weeks later, I'm at Walmart and randomly run into someone. Didn't know who she was. And my future wife, Amanda. And asked her out. We ended up going on a date. And I was telling her all the different, because back then I was working like 10 security jobs a year. I mean, it was, like I had a regular was at Whataburger. I was working an apartment complex where I was a courtesy officer. I was doing the gun shows. I was, you name it, I did it. School security, you name it. And so I was telling her all my jobs. She's like, oh yeah. She's like, a couple weeks ago. She's like, I went to Whataburger on Gentry Parkway, and that guy was a total jerk. And I was like, oh. And so I started putting 2 and 2 together. I was like, was he in a red Dodge pickup? And she's like, he was. I was like, my bad. She still married me. So.
Okay.
But yeah, that's how I met my wife. And what's funny is Mike, my foster father, he brought that story up at our wedding. He was like, this is how they met, and he offered to give her a reminder by a little written note if she didn't move her car. I was like, oh, yeah.
So you got to experience the animals at the Caldwell Zoo?
I did. Well, so if anyone follows my Facebook, like, I am an animal lover.
Yeah.
I mean, I took a picture of a snake wearing a spider on its head in my front yard, and I was like, look, a snake with a spider hat. And someone posted, great, now we have snakes with assault spiders.
Yep.
Awesome. But I have a creek that runs through my property, and especially during summertime, I'll go down there and I'll spot all the different snakes. They don't bother me. As long as they leave me alone, I leave them alone.
Yeah.
Now, if the one gets a little close to the house, I will relocate it.
Yeah.
I've got beaver friends in Mud Creek between Troop and White House. Whenever it's warm out, I'll go out there and you'll see them swimming around. But yeah, no, the zoo, that was a very cool experience. My wife ended up being the lead elephant trainer at the zoo.
That's cool.
And she ended up giving it up when we adopted Madison because she wanted to have a job where she could be at home and help raise our girl. Well, she ended up going and being a teacher at Kilgore for a little bit, and she hated that. Let me tell you, teachers are so underpaid that it's so much work. It is not you show up at 7, you leave at 3:30. No, she was there from like 6 until 5:30 at night, coming up with lesson plans and all that, and it just wasn't worth it.
That's a hot button issue right now.
Funny enough, I was school resource officer right after COVID at Troop. And I was in the school for a year. Dude, those kids are so freaking cool.
Yeah.
That was like my dream job. I was so happy doing that because you're walking through the school, all the kids come up giving you high fives. You're still the good guy in their eyes.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I was in pre-K, finger painting and shaving cream and stuff, Like, it was great. And those kids still to this day, they see me, they call me Sarge because that's what they called me in school. I was a sergeant at the time. Established relationships with all the parents, The other day I went and talked with New Generations Daycare over there close to the ESD on 110 between White House and Tyler. They had asked if a couple of officers could come and just kind of visit with kids and do like a career day, if you will. And one of the teachers there was like, hey, it's Sarge. She's like, my kid, Amelia. I was like, oh, the one, she was in pre-K with, And so, established long-lasting relationships, and teachers are doing that every day. Every day.
In the past, the firefighters in Tyler lived in Tyler, and the police in Tyler lived in Tyler. The judges in Tyler were from around Tyler. And I think that if you go to like somewhere like Dallas or Houston, if you live in Dallas and you want to be a well-paid cop, you're probably going to go want to work for like North Richland Hills. You're probably not going to want to work for Dallas PD, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be down there by Parkland or whatever. You'd be running gunshots and all that stuff. But if you go work in North Richland Hills, it's going to be like parking tickets. You know what I mean? And then they pay better because it's a more affluent populace. But I think that there's an important thing there that you hit with the relationships.
You don't get to know them.
So what good is it to have somebody that's enforcing the law when your kids don't know their kids? Like, there's no ties to the community.
Yeah.
So then it's easy for the population to be resentful towards them. It's easy for the officers to feel disconnected. So what you're doing in small town Texas here is you're actually getting to be a police officer the way, like, historically, it was meant to be. And so officer discretion goes farther.
It does. Well, and not only that, do you know how many calls I've shown up to? And it might be a mom and dad arguing. They're not fighting. They're just arguing, and maybe get a little loud, and so a neighbor calls in on them.
Right.
And I walk in, and then I see the kids, and the kids are like, Sarge, and the parents are like, wait, you know my kids? I'm like, yeah, they're better behaved than you are right now. But yeah, and again, it's just you're building bridges to the community. But I live in art. Know a lot of the people in art. worked in troop for 17 years. I know just about everyone in troop.
Well, and like for the record, if you're listening to this and you don't understand the geography of where we are, like ARP and troop are
Right there. They have the same mascot.
Southeast, you say that ARP and troop are the biggest rivals.
I know.
And they're 7 miles apart.
Exactly. And they have the same mascot. Like that.
How can they both be the Tigers?
I don't know. I have never actually looked into where that came from, to be honest. But that, and I know a lot of people in White House because I go to church in White House. I'm a coach with the Criminal Justice Club for White House High School.
Oh, that's
actually
cool.
Yeah, they have a competition coming up here in a couple of weeks where they're going to show off their dispatch skills, patrol skills, things like that.
Is that HOSA? No,
No.
it's not HOSA.
No,
Okay, sorry.
I don't know what HOSA is.
Well, HOSA is the Health Occupational Students of America, and my daughter's the president at Legacy this year, and she's a senior, and they're having their regional competition like on the 22nd or something at Legacy. And there's going to be like 2,000 students coming from all, mostly DFW.
So this is Criminal Justice Club. I know that it is a statewide or a nationwide concept. I've only been working with them for, 4 or 5 months.
Got it.
Great group of kids. Corey Lemons, who is the teacher at White House ISD, and he used to be, well, I guess he still is, but he used to be a full-time White House police officer, and so we used to do calls together all the time. And he had asked me, he's like, hey, would you mind, since I'm one of the only officers with dispatch experience, he's like, would you mind teaching these kids dispatch skills? And you work with them while we're working with the other kids doing patrol skills and room clearing and felony traffic stops. And these are all kids who want to go into a career field of law enforcement.
Right.
And
we didn't have that when we were in high school.
I know.
You know what I mean? Like my daughter's like I don't know, she's got all these certifications. She could do stuff. Patient care, technician, EKG.
Mm-hmm.
She's getting all of these certifications now and 30 hours of college already.
Yeah. Yeah.
We didn't have
the dual
that.
credit thing. It's amazing.
They were like, take a
welding
pre-AP.
class.
Yeah. It was like pre-AP. You don't get any credit if you don't take the test.
No, and that was I graduated in the top 10 and I never took an AP class ever.
Yeah.
And I was like,
if you had taken those AP classes I took, you wouldn't have been top 10.
Probably not.
No.
Yeah, I was in the bottom of my classes, and they forced me to take pre-AP classes.
Let me tell you,
and that's the reason why I was in the bottom.
I graduated 8th in my class, and I used to do all my homework at school in different classes. So I'd work on that and then work on the next one. And now I see some of the schoolwork that my kids come home with, and I'm like, no idea.
Dude, my daughter came home with some chemistry, and I took a couple, I took chemistry in college, and I looked at it. And I said, well, my wife's got a master's in business. I said, hey, babe, come here and look at this. And she looked at it. And then we started YouTube and stuff. And then I went, I got a buddy that's got a master's in chemistry, and he lives in Oregon. And it's like 11 o'clock. She has to turn it in tomorrow. She's crying. I mean, it's like we're on the last yard line. It's a bad night. It's super stressful. I have no idea. I call up my buddy. He's like, hey, man, we just finished dinner, because the time changed.
Yeah, right.
And he's like, yeah, I do this kind of stuff at work, except it looks like this. And he sent me a screenshot, and I was like, I don't know what that looks like, some nuclear weapon stuff.
That's some scribbles on a paper is what
Dude,
that is.
it was like, it was like these equations that she was balancing, but it was like a whole whiteboard full of it, and I was like, yeah, I'm out, and he got on the phone with her and helped her.
It's like that meme of Charlie Day where he's got all the different the different threads going to
by the way,
different pins.
It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's one of the best shows. This was the first season specifically, I think. It's one of the funniest shows. But that goes back to that, it's not what you know, it's who you know. It's like the connections you make, the relationships that you develop. And I think that you've been excellent at doing that, exactly that.
My wife, she always tells everyone I'm a social butterfly, and I guess to some degree I am. For a lot of officers, you either really get to know people or you just really hate being around people. Mm-hmm. And it really it's one or the other. You can either see the dark side of everyone, which is, it's very easy to fall into that category. No one calls the officers just to say, hey, hope you're having a great day. No, you only get called to the worst day of someone's life, typically. Or some people have the worst days every day, but still. You see the negativity in everything. You don't get to see the positivity in everything. And I also think that's really important concept for why community policing should be so strong in every department. I am a huge proponent of community policing.
What is that?
That's a great question. So community policing is things like coffee with a cop. We might have, we're going to be at the library. Come have coffee with a cop. Get to know your officers. Know who it is that's patrolling your streets. We've had officers that they see a group of kids playing basketball, they'll stop, play some basketball with them. I carry stickers everywhere. On Halloween, I carry bags of candy and I just hand them out. That's community policing. It's where they get to know who you are instead of
hearts and minds.
Yeah. Well,
and then we'll take you to
this isn't Vietnam, but yeah. Am I going to hear Fortunate Son start playing here? But yeah, I mean, essentially, it's just letting them get to know you. A lot of people, when they see us in one of the scariest parts of their lives or scariest times of their lives, especially when it comes to kids.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, sometimes kids are going to see us taking mom or dad away in handcuffs. And I hate that. And if that person's being cooperative, typically I'll be like, hey, I'm going to let you walk out, and we're going to put handcuffs out and once you get to the car because I don't want your kids seeing it. Now, some people don't give me that opportunity. If they're acting up and acting a fool, okay, I got to do what I got to do. But,
right.
I've had some people that just had, petty little warrant. Now, when it comes to warrants, it's signed by a judge and it orders a peace officer to take someone into custody. Okay, I have to take you to jail. Don't have to put handcuffs on you in front of your kids.
Yeah.
I'm going to help you out. You got to help me out. I've even told kids, hey, I'm going to borrow Dad. He's got to help me with something, and he'll be right back here in a few hours.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, okay. Kids don't need to know what it is going on.
I think the kids know. That's the problem. See, this is the thing. Kids see stuff.
They do.
Like we try to make parenting this do as I say, not as I do thing, this ideal. And we like to try to, reframe things and think, my kid didn't really know about this. Like when I was a kid, I knew if my parents were fighting.
Yeah.
And they didn't ever have like a physical fight. But I knew when things weren't good.
It's the subtle
and
not
they
talking
wanted
to each other.
Yeah. And they wanted to protect my brother and I from that, I think. I don't know. I haven't asked them. Mm-hmm. But I never got to see the resolution. Because, Dad would go to the golf course or Mom would call a friend. And then, like, the next time they were together with all of us, they just acted like everything was normal. So I hear you because you're in a position where maybe the kid decides to pick up a frying pan and hit you. Or maybe the kid gets older and he's like, you're that guy that took my dad. Maybe he's like, hey, my dad was making bad decisions. I mean, you came on here and you were like, hey, my dad stole the prescription pad and was writing his own prescriptions and he went to prison. And I didn't hear you go, and the cop that arrested him was a jerk. You know what I mean?
He did it to himself.
He, so
made a mistake.
Life gives you the test and then you get the lesson.
Well, and everyone is capable of doing really, really good things or really, really evil things. I don't believe that anyone is truly 100% good or 100% evil. We are all capable of both. Yeah. And typically the good people are just the people who can fight their demons a little bit better than the others. Mm-hmm. Because everyone's got them. Everyone has their weaknesses. Everyone has their vices. And those who can fight the demons better are the ones who look better. But everyone's going to fall down from time to time.
And you don't know what it is that they're struggling
You don't. And a lot of times I'll talk to people if I can, on the way to jail. I always try to have a conversation. Now, if you're, just screaming at me and calling me names, I might just crank the radio up a little bit more. But yeah, most of the people that go to jail is just someone who made a bad choice. Single bad choice, and that's the consequence. Doesn't mean they're a bad person by any means, And I tell people, listen, man, this isn't personal. This is just business. You made a bad choice. Unfortunately, it's my responsibility that I'm the consequence. Rather, I am to escort you to your consequence,
Well, we're innocent until proven guilty in this nation. Mm-hmm. But if you get arrested for something, you've got to bond out. You've got to hire an attorney. You've got to prove that you're innocent if you really are innocent. And if you're not really innocent, you still have to do those things because otherwise, you're undefended. And we all have a right to a defense. So I guess, have you seen anybody or is that like an officer discretion thing? Like, have you seen people show up and go, hey, man, like this wife called and said that he beat her up and like she clearly hasn't been touched? And I'm sure y'all see the craziest things.
We do.
Right?
And there's a lot of gray area where, you'll get called to something and they're like, yeah, he punched me in the face. Okay, where?
Yeah.
Here, point to it. Okay, did it hurt? Well, yeah, but there's no marks or anything. Now, if he's like, yeah, man, I did. Okay. And an important specification in the law, at least in the state of Texas, pain is injury. So if you feel pain, that is assault caused bodily injury.
So you can't spank your kids?
No, you can spank your kids because it actually says that you can use reasonable discipline.
What's that?
That's a great question because it's in the
What
eye
is
of
that?
the beholder. Now, I'll tell you what Child Protective Services says. They says that you cannot leave bruises or marks on your child that last longer than 24 hours. But some kids just bruise easily. Now, that is not state law. That is their interpretation of what's excessive.
Got it. That was like the hand brace ruling that the ATF came out with. It's
Yeah.
like it wasn't the law,
Right.
but they just created
yes,
a ruling.
And that's the thing. I've worked several child abuse cases where they're like, no, they were jumping around, and yeah, I had my little fly swatter trying to hit them, and I popped them in the leg. Okay, that sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take you to jail for it. Now, I can't tell you what CPS might do. And it
Well, in
depends
my
on,
experience, I've had a couple of personal and a couple of professional experiences with CPS. And if somebody's a CPS person, I'd love to have you on the podcast. But it seems like the people that shouldn't have the kids get the kids
Always
back.
get 'em back.
And the people that should have the kids go through all, and it's like, are they just doing this to like milk the system to get the most money from the thing they can? Or like, what's going on? They send the parents that have a house, that have a car, that love the kids, that didn't really even injure the kids. They send them to every class. They charge them money. They make them get psych evals. And then the parents that are like, unstable, homeless, they can't find them, terrible, beating their kids, drunk all the time, gone, homeless. Those people will have the kid back next year.
Yep.
I sat as a counselor in a group and watched women go, they took my kids again. And I'm like, you tested positive for methamphetamine. What on earth is wrong with you? And then they would get the kid back.
Yeah.
And I went, I can't do this anymore.
And when it comes to meth, heroin, fentanyl, those things are especially dangerous because those are water soluble.
Yeah.
What that means is it absorbs through your skin. So if a kid touches it,
I had a guy one time test positive for cocaine because I was I don't want to have to cut this out. When I got hired out of college as a counselor intern, the ladies at the place were like, we've got a new DW. And I was like, what's DW stand for? And they were like, you get to watch the pretrial and release federal probation guys pee in a cup.
oh, that
And,
DW,
you got
there it is.
And so this one dude, I was like, you going to be positive for anything? And he's like, no. And like, I was, they had to call in to get a number. They have to come in all the time on federal, right? And he's like, no, man, I'm good. I studied. I'm like, okay.
Studied.
And, bro, I'm like, the cocaine line is solid, bud. Like, you positive. He's like, oh, no, I just had it in my pocket. One of my partners just like, you holding my pocket. I was sweating. I think it just went through my skin. I was like, that's not the way that works.
That's not the way cocaine works.
That's not the way that works, bud. I'm like, you positive. You had an opportunity to tell me the truth, and I didn't have to put you through this test today, maybe. But now,
Yeah.
You're there.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like when you have one of the big ones and it's around kids, that is an automatic. Your kids get taken away, and chances are you're going to get some type of child endangerment charge also.
say I get pulled over, and you go, hey, do you have anything on your person? You got some drugs or something? And I'm like, yeah, I got a joint. Is it like, all right, get out of the car now? Like,
Yes.
Now you've got probable cause to search my car?
Yes.
I don't like that.
But
Like, why did I tell them that I have it?
But
for the
here's
record,
the
I don't
saving
do
grace,
drugs.
though. Here's the saving grace. If you tell me, hey, man, I've got a joint. Okay. Is that all you got? Well, yeah. Great. If that's all you got, I'll give you a ticket for paraphernalia instead of taking you to jail. But because you've told me there's contraband in the car, I'm going to check for more. And the reason for that is sometimes people will put a little joint in the ashtray so that's what the officer focuses on, and they
hide
miss
the
the
bag
3
of
kilos in
coke.
the trunk. You know, they're like, oh yeah,
I feel like if I had
bingo,
3 kilos in the
jackpot.
trunk, I for sure wouldn't have a joint. Like if I was
be
going to move
surprised.
drugs, I would hire, like, what's that actor, that old dude? He was in a movie, The Mule.
Oh, Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood. I would hire like a Clint Eastwood looking dude from like down drinking coffee at one of these like pharmacies or something, and I'd be like, "Hey, bud, can you drive to San Antonio for me and drive back tomorrow?" Yeah. Okay, cool. Because that dude's not getting pulled over, and if he does, he's gonna be like, "Write me a ticket, then." You know, he don't care.
Yeah.
You know.
So you know, I was a canine handler for 8 years, right? So I was a narcotics unit for 8 years.
With who?
Was true.
With Troop?
Yeah.
Okay.
My dog died in 2018.
Like natural causes.
He was getting old. He had a tumor. His name was Luke.
Oh.
Yeah. Luke was my best friend. I got to take my
bet.
best friend to work with me every day. And my old uniform had a permanent drool stain on its shoulder because we would ride around and he would be in his cage with his head on my shoulder. And we're just riding around like that all day long. But people will do some random things. Like, you know how many people that were carrying dope around and like mules, like legit mules?
Yeah.
They'll put the little stick figure family on the back window so that they
Yeah.
look like they're just a regular
Yep.
person, you know? You got to the point where you're looking for things like, okay, this entire car is covered in mud except for this one rear quarter panel that's been recently taken off and put back on. Okay, that might be a compartment, right? But I got to go do some training with Border Patrol down in Laredo. They have the National Narcotics Detective Dog Association, and they get together once a year for a national conference and competition. By the way, we took 11th place in the nation.
There
one
you
year.
go. That's
Buddy.
pretty good. 11th
Yeah,
place.
that's pretty good.
Not
This
bad.
is how people don't know that, but like
Yeah.
stuff moves through here on I-20.
Oh yeah,
you know?
for sure. But getting to train with the Border Patrol, they have a huge junkyard of all these seized vehicles, and I got to see some of the stash houses or stash compartments in some of these vehicles. Dude, these people are brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a hidden button and like pull open something, hit a button, the whole dash will just roll out on hydraulics.
Yeah.
Like things that just you would never think about.
Yeah, and they're also starting to like engineer their vehicles to escape. I saw one video of, I can't remember what it was, but they the cop pulled up behind them, turned on their lights, and then they flicked on a light that
Yeah,
was blinding
big bright blinding lights
right
on the cop to blind the
towards
camera.
the cop.
Yeah.
And then they like poured out some oil slick or something,
Yep.
like straight out of Looney Tunes.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And then just like burned off on that cop, and it's like
That reminds me of what was that movie where you had to race to get out of prison or whatever?
I know the one you're
You know what
talking
I'm
about. Oh,
And it they had like
Death
weapons.
Race.
Yes, Death
Yeah.
Race. And they had like
yeah.
traps and stuff on it.
Yeah.
That's what that sounds
Yeah.
like. Either that or Mario Kart. One of the
I'm
other.
pretty sure they gave a lot of ideas for people.
I'm sure. Well, and another thing they had, and this actually happened on I-20 a while back. Like they were running up and down I-20 with no headlights, no tail lights, and they would have night vision goggles on so they could see perfectly. But trooper on the side of the highway might see 100 miles an hour on the radar, look up, and not see anything. Be like, what?
Bro, I have had that happen to me, like on 64.
Yeah.
Out next to the airport. Like, I was just driving along, and all of a sudden I just heard,
Yeah.
you could see just like the outline silhouette of the car, and
Yeah.
it's like, what the crap, dude, did I just see?
And that's the thing. A lot of the major highways, they're not super lighted. You have lights every now and then, but they're not. It's not continuous.
Exactly.
You know. Yeah, they're smart, man. They really are.
Dang. What was it like handling the dog?
Oh man, that was one of the best jobs ever.
I bet.
It really was. And Luke was a lab. He was a black lab.
Oh, okay.
And
So he was just smelling. He
he
wasn't
was
biting
just
people.
correct.
He was
Which came back to bite me, not him. But whenever we would do weekly trainings. Well, as one of the only guys without a bite dog who got to wear the bite suit for everyone else. This guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Luke was great, man. And, I mean, smart as a whip. Like I had him where I could tell him to walk across his toy to me, and he wouldn't pick it up. But you could tell it when he walked over it, he was like shaking, waiting, like, please let me have it.
Ready for it. Ready
But yeah,
for it.
we used to do all kinds of little demonstrations for Boy Scouts, church groups, asking, hey, can you bring the dog? Let's see how he works. A lot of people don't know this. We actually have drugs from the DEA for canine training, where I probably shouldn't say this on the air, but I'm going to say it. Like, you can order drugs from the DEA for training purposes. And so we had 28 grams of meth, 28 grams of heroin, 28 grams of marijuana, 28 grams of cocaine, like all the big stuff. They send it USPS. Like, we get this box of USPS from the DEA, and you open it up, and there's all this dope in it, and we're like, oh my God. You would think they would say, hey, you need to come pick this up. You know,
Was it like marked DEA?
it just had like the label said DEA. But yeah, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
As much as mail gets lost,
Oh, dude.
that would be terrible.
Holy smokes.
I don't know if
dude.
they do that anymore, but yeah.
sure
I
policy
probably
has
don't now.
changed.
Yeah. Mind you, that was like 2008.
Oh, yeah.
That's a long time ago. When did you get into the police force?
October 25th, 2006, I started with White House PD.
Okay.
I've been a fully sworn officer since January 2008.
What's your family up to, man? Like, what do you got?
Well,
You've got a bio kiddo, and then you've got an adopted kiddo.
which in our terms, adopted or bio doesn't matter. Madison may not have my blood, but that is definitely my kid.
Yeah, I've seen some updates on Facebook,
Yeah.
and I was like, that sounds a little bit like Kyle.
Yeah,
you know?
she is 100% my kid for sure. She is very, very involved in the troop community and White House ARP community. She house sits and dog sits for some of the previously elected officials in ARP. She babysits most of the teachers in troop, babysits their kids when they're unavailable. She's very involved. Her moral compass points true north, but she is so naive. She is so naive.
She's gonna be mad at you for
people
this.
take it. She is. That's okay. She'll own it as long as I don't say something like she's dumb as a box of rocks.
Oh,
We can cut that out.
Yeah, I'll cut it out.
No, you don't have to cut that out.
Okay.
I have told her to go apologize to trees, and she's like, "For what?" I was like, "For stealing their oxygen." No, what's funny is she had a doctor's appointment one time. She and I are just insulting each other, like jokingly.
Yeah,
yeah. Banter.
Father daughter, yeah.
Yeah.
And we're just going back and forth, and I mean, we were really just giving it to each other. And the nurse was looking at her file and looks at us and was like, "This says here she's adopted."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And the nurse was like, God, she's like, girl, you got the right family.
Yeah.
You were part of that family.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, it's my kid, Sophie, love her to death. She is smart as a whip. Her moral compass never points south, but it teeters around the north, northeast, northwest, I always tell everyone she needs to be a defense attorney.
Yeah.
Because, like,
You would know.
Yes, I would. No, like, we had a case of Dr. Peppers, and between the girls, they went through like a 12-pack of Dr. Peppers in like a day.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, new rule: 1 soda a day. One. You only get one.
Probably a good rule.
Well, Sophie goes to Dollar General,
Buys her
buys a
own.
2-liter bottle, and I was like, what is that? She's like, that's my 1 soda for the day. I was like, girl. She's like, hey, you didn't say how big one was. This is technically 1 bottle. That is my 1 soda.
Yeah, don't start drinking.
I was like, all right, new rule. You can have 12 fluid ounces of soda a day. I was like, all right, because she's good at not necessarily breaking the rules, but finding a way around the rules. Yeah, she is a genius, but uses it for nefarious purposes.
Yeah.
I like it.
Honestly, it cracks me up, but I'm like, all right. Now we gotta have a battle of wits.
How old are your girls?
So Sophie's 15, Madison just turned 18.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Madison is a senior this year. Sophie's a freshman.
Okay.
And is your wife still a teacher? Or?
No, so my wife is now a laboratory tech at Christus.
Okay.
Yeah, she went back to school and got that, and she really, really enjoys that. My wife she's very introverted until she gets to know someone.
Yeah.
And so being in the lab where she's just like with her microscope and her computer, and that is, she loves it.
Yeah.
She's like
Got it.
just in her own little world, Yeah. Which she had a degree in biology before she decided to go do that. And
she's actually using her degree now.
She is. Yeah.
That's cool.
Now, she did have to go get her medical laboratory degree also, but she got to skip a bunch of the coursework because she already had it.
Yeah.
But yeah, she definitely the smartest woman I ever dated. so I had to marry her.
Dude, I'm in the same boat. Well, what are you up to now, man? Are you going to be like the chief of police and...
So I am actually running for Justice of the Peace for Smith County.
What is that?
Precinct 3. So it is...
Road
it's a
pirates.
judge. It's a judge.
Pirates. Is it judge?
It is a judge.
Wait, now, hold on. Now, is that like in the Westerns when they walk up and they go, yep, he's dead?
Something like that, yeah, actually. So
okay.
in Smith County, we don't have coroners.
Right. We got JPs.
And so the JP is the Justice of the Peace, and that is the judge that shows up, determines whether further investigation needs to be done.
Okay, so that's like the JP's job. The police don't go, this was for sure a murder, you know?
So the police can. They'll do an investigation also.
Yeah.
It's a co-venture is what it is. And so I've worked...
What's a constable? Like, we have all this weird stuff in Texas.
So
like,
a constable...
should I know this? Should
probably.
I know what it is? Did they teach it in school? Did you know what a constable is?
They teach it in police academy because Texas... so state troopers...
Yeah.
Constables... sheriff deputies, deputy constables, deputy sheriffs, police officers, city marshals. We are all under Texas peace officers. We are all Texas peace officers.
Okay, I follow
We're
that.
all on the same level.
But how come it's always a state trooper that pulls me over because I don't run a front plate on my car? But it's never a sheriff or a constable or a city marshal or a Tyler PD.
I'll break it down.
Yeah.
Or
Give
in
us
the country.
Give us a breakdown.
So state troopers are basically the guardians of the roadways in Texas.
They are the law enforcement of the state of Texas.
They are. They are also the
highways.
They are, well, any public road in Texas.
Okay.
Not just highway. Everyone calls them highway patrol. Even they call themselves highway patrol, but it's every public roadway.
So I have two stories about state troopers. I want to tell you this because I want to get your take on it. Pat's not heard these, so this is going to be funny. When I was 18, okay? Mm-hmm. We found this little trick where if you go to Texas Roadhouse on Friday or Saturday night and pull up your car next to one of the big, nice trucks, and you jump into the bed of the truck, there's probably a cooler.
Oh.
And if there's a cooler in this nice truck, and it's probably, like a nice cooler, there's probably alcohol in it.
Probably so.
And most people don't lock their coolers. Mm-hmm. And so one day, I was in a car that I didn't own. I don't even know that anybody that was in the car owned the car. Like, I'm not saying I stole it. But, like, somebody else showed up in it, and I was like, I'll drive. Right? And it may have been like a girlfriend's mom's car or something. I don't know. I don't know whose car it was. It's like Friday night, 10 o'clock. I pull into Texas Roadhouse. We go down the first row. We go down the second row, F-350. I hop out. I hop in the back. 30-pack. Bottle of Boone's Farm. I'm like, it's about to be lit. And so we get in the car now, like, we're pulling around in here, and I've turned the headlights off, because, like, we're just creeping in the parking lot. I'm not trying to, like, attract attention. So
turning your headlights off in the dark and driving around
100% the way you
absolutely
draw
attracts attention.
Yeah. And so, like, everybody else in the car is like 17, 16, because, like, whatever, they're ready to go do
being dumb kids.
Yeah. It's like a Mazda 626, right? So there's like no room. There's no room. So I hand like the 2 cases of beer to like the kids in the back. I have no idea who these kids are. Like, I'm telling this story now. Couldn't tell you their names. Don't know if they were male or female. I'm just like, hold this beer. So it's just sitting in their lap. Cool. And I take the liquor bottle and I stick it under the front passenger seat. Somebody was in the passenger seat. Probably my girlfriend's. Probably her mom's car. Anyway, so I go around the parking lot, come by, there's people like coming in and out of Texas Roadhouse, just right there on the loop, and I make a right out of Texas Roadhouse. Before I get to 110, boom, lights. And I just put it in park. I'm in the outside lane. I just pull over next to the curb, put it in park. This big, black, tall state trooper gets out, puts his hat on,
Oh, they are very, very serious about their hats.
He likes the hat, right? So he walks up, got his flashlight, looks in the back seat, looks at the beer, looks at me, says, I'm Officer so-and-so with, Highway Patrol. Is there a reason why you're driving without your headlights on tonight? And I was like, click. I'm like, no, sir. He's like, y'all have a nice night.
What?
Gets back in his car. And I'm like, skirt. And we drove to wherever the party was, and I did not leave that place. Now, my next story is when my brother was going to the police.
Before you go to that story,
go ahead.
You know what that sounds like to me?
Officer discretion?
Didn't want to deal with paperwork.
That sounds like he was either just getting off work or was off work but saw you as a safety issue while he was headed home. And he was like, nope, not going to do it. Turn your lights on and I'm out.
I mean, look, all I got to say is I look back at situations like that where I was the only adult in the car. I was a very barely illegal adult.
Not to mention taking beer out of the bed of a truck is technically burglary of a motor vehicle.
There's statutes of limitations, right?
There were several things that happened in that one moment that I should have gone to jail and court for, and it wouldn't have been a fun time.
Yep.
And I don't know that I would have survived those things. Like, I don't really understand. I don't know why God does what he does. I don't even really want to understand anymore. I'm just like, okay, I'm here for it. And I'm not saying that if you have a similar story and they yanked you out of the car, maced you, beat you up, and took you to jail and you sat in jail for 3 months, like, I'm not saying that God didn't love you. I'm not saying that God did this because he loved me. But I look back at stuff like that and I go, how in the world? But, you know, that to me was officer discretion.
Yeah.
You know, that was one of my good stories about officer discretion. The other time, my brother was at the police academy at TJC, and he went on a ride-along with a state trooper. This dude was like training day, bro. The dude was like, get in the car, you ready for this? You know, he's like, we're the MF and, you know, state patrol or whatever, you know, like, you know, he's like Georgia State Patrol, you know, but like we were here, you know. Yeah. And he's like, every call they ran, he like put the lights on and drove as fast as the car would go. And, you know, he was like, we kick doors in this crew. You know, he was like telling my brother how it was going to be or whatever. My brother was like, I don't know if I want to be a state trooper, you know. And so they had one call where this kid was doing something, and they pulled up and they're like talking to the guy. They don't have him in handcuffs or anything. They're just talking to him. And the dad pulls up to the stop. And he's like, hey, that's my son. And he's like, hey, you know, you need to go stand over there. And he's like, hey, that's my son. And he's like, he like put him on the ground or something right there. He's like, I told you once, you know, I'm not telling you twice. And, you know, my brother was just like, man, state troopers are crazy. He was like, state troopers are crazy. He's like, never, ever mess with a state trooper. My third story that I didn't warn you about.
You got 3?
I got 3.
God dang, man.
So last summer, we drove our Lexus SUV all the way to Virginia. And we went to D.C. and stuff. And so on the way from D.C. back to Gloucester, Virginia, where my wife's aunt and uncle live, you know, like all the highways in Virginia, you know, it's like these weird roads that have like these super tall trees. Like, I think I come from a place with a bunch of trees. Right. But like in Virginia, they're like really tall. And we're like, you know, Williamsburg, you know, we're like in that area, right? Mm-hmm. And we had gotten off the big interstate and we're on this like other highway that's like 2 lanes, no divider. And I don't know how fast I was going, bro. But my radar went off, you know, because I ride radar, you know. I ain't playing no games. I wasn't using radar on the motorcycle when I got that alleged ticket.
The alleged.
But radar went off, and the cop, he was like in the shadows, you know. It's like dusk. I couldn't see him, and I was like, oh, no. And so I let off the gas, and then I went, nah, and I got back in it, and I was like, dude, this guy's going to have to turn around. And then I looked in my rear view, and he was 3 cars behind me. I don't know how he did it, bro. I don't know what they got in those cars. And so, like, I just pulled over. He didn't have his lights on. He just, like, whoop, you know, whipped it and just jumped in. I was like, there's no way he could have done that. But he did. So I just pull over, roll all the windows down, turn the lights on the inside of the car, put my hands on the dash. And I'm just sitting there. And, like, you know, we've got the 9-year-olds, you know, or the just now turned 10-year-old stepson, and, you know, my daughter, my wife, you know, everybody's in the car. I'm like, y'all shut up, don't say anything. And he comes up and he's like, you were going pretty fast back there. And I was like, yep. And he's like, you know how fast you're going? I was like, nope. He's like, you got your license and insurance? I give it to him, you know. And like this whole time, I'm like just trying to keep my hands on the thing. I've got guns. I don't know what the laws are in Virginia, but I'm not trying to find out, you know, because I'm sure that I'm breaking them. And and you know, so like I've got my hands up there, and then he's like, "You still live in Texas?" And I'm like, "Yes, sir." And he's like, "Well, I'm gonna tell you something." He goes, "If you go, like, I don't know what he said. It's like 90 miles an hour in Virginia is a felony." Or something, right? That's what he tells me. And like he's like, you know, I got you a lot faster, but like when I got behind you and turned my lights on, you were going like 88 or something, you know, and I don't know what the speed is, 65, some stupid speed limit, you know, the road was fine.
They're all stupid.
And he's like, slow it down. I'm like, whew!
Roger that.
Like, you know, before he got to the car, my wife was already like, you were doing felony speeds. He could arrest you. You could go to jail right now. You know, she's like telling me all this stuff. I'm like, everybody shut up. And, you know, the 10-year-old, he's liable to be like, he was definitely going 100. I could see it on the radar. You know, like I was like, everybody, nobody say a word. And then, so, you know, like we pull off. And, like, I put my cruise back at 95 or whatever I was doing, you know. And they're like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, hey, you know, God likes us, you know. But, like, the whole deal was there's a right and a wrong way to get pulled over.
There is.
Everybody speeds sometimes. You know how many cops I get behind that aren't running lights and sirens that are going 5, 10 over? I'm like, come on, guys. Do you want to give us a lesson?
I don't speed anymore.
Anymore?
I used to speed a long time ago, but I mean, I learned my lessons.
I think everyone speeds from time to time. And honestly,
like on accident, mostly.
No, man, I'm like 55 and a 75.
Yeah.
Like I'm just putting along.
get a ticket.
I'm
You're
one of
that
them dudes.
Yeah.
I'm like I am not in a rush for anybody for any reason.
When I lived in White House, I got off work like an hour early one day, or like the time change had happened or something, and I'm on my Harley, and I've got my cruise control on, 40, 45 or whatever it was, and I get pulled over by like the motor officer in White House. This is, I don't know, 8 years ago or something. And I'm like...
He's now a Precinct 3 constable.
Oh, nice. I was like, hey, man, I know I was going the speed limit because I had cruise control on.
Did he have that magnificent mustache?
I think he did. He talked to me about my motorcycle, and then he was telling me he had a motorcycle at home and stuff. And I'm like, cool. I'm like, but like, I just want to be clear that like I for sure was not breaking the law. And he's like, did you see that flashing school zone sign back there?
Oh.
And I was
literally.
like, nope. I got off work early today. I usually come home after that sign's turned off. And he's like, slow it down, you know. Yeah. So like, but like. My daughter got pulled over. You know, she's been driving for a year and a half or something, and so early, she got pulled over. And I know we've been pulled over with her in the car with me, for sure. I mean, you could set cruise control on an STI at 135. You know, I made it in record time from Tyler to Denver, Colorado.
Right.
We've been pulled over. Well, like, she's got RBF, you know? And so, like, this UT Tyler officer pulls her over. And he's like, you're getting a ticket, young lady. You know what I mean? He, like, gives her the 10th degree. And I'm like, hey, did you roll the windows down? Did you put your hands on the steering wheel? Like, you know, did you do all the things that I try to tell you? So, like, is there, like, you're a police officer.
I'm now running for JP.
And you're running for JP. What can we do as citizens to make sure the officers feel safe and are safe? Mm-hmm. And also, like, give us a shot for maybe some of that sweet officer discretion. You know? Like,
I can only speak for myself with the sweet officer discretion.
That's fair. But, like, you know, hey,
everyone has
best practices.
Everyone has their own things. I'll tell you right now, the best way to get out of a ticket with me is you make me laugh without trying. And what I mean by that is I stopped one guy one time. I was like, hey, I'm Lieutenant Stowers, Troop BD. Do you know why you're being stopped? Yes, sir, I do. I had my head up my butt. And I'm like, God. I was like, get out of here. I stopped one guy, and he was going, I don't know, 15 over. And you could tell he was, like, really antsy. I was like, you want to tell me why you're going that fast? You really want to know? Well, now I do. And he's like, he pulls his phone out, and he goes to his, he had a deer feeder set up.
Oh.
And he shows it to me, and it's like a 400-pound hog. He's like, that's at my feeder right now. I'm on my way to kill it. I was like, only in East Texas,
that's
man.
That's such an East Texas answer.
I was like, all right, get out of here. But I was like, make it there so you can kill it. If you get a wreck, you're not going to be able to take it out. But yeah, things like that. I stopped a
He's just like cracking up on it.
I stopped a woman once because her music was so loud I could hear her coming from the other side of Troop. Like, I was sitting at the four-way, and I swear I heard her music for a solid minute before she ever got to the four-way. And so I was like,
she was going 70.
See, I am one of those people.
So
I will bump some music.
and I wasn't going to give her a ticket. It was like midnight, something like that. I wasn't going to give her a ticket. I was going to be like, hey, man, people are trying to sleep. Your music is
Chill out.
crazy loud. Turn it down until you get out of the city limits. So I pulled her over and I was like, you know why you've been stopped? She's like, no. I was like, your music's a little loud. And I was like, you're well beyond the allowed noise for the noise statute. And she's like, but it's Madonna.
What?
I was like, wait.
Even worse.
I was like, does Madonna not apply to that statute? And she's like, I mean, you're supposed to play Madonna loud. And I was like, oh, I don't guess I ever heard that before, but it threw me off so much. I was like, just get out of here. Don't crank it back up until you leave the city limits.
What was she driving?
Oh, it's like it was a convertible. It was like,
it was.
I can't even, dude.
she just like was straight face, man. She's like, but it's Madonna. I was like, oh, I don't even know what to say. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, cool. No, you want to know about some crazy laws, though? You were talking about crazy laws. In the state of Texas, there's only 3 things that I cannot arrest you for on site. Do you know what they are? Speeding by itself. You cannot be on-cited for speeding by itself. Now, if you refuse to sign the citation, then you're, by law, supposed to be taken before a magistrate right away.
Got it.
However, I can't just say, I'm going to hook you up for this, right? It's something you do.
No, but what if I was going like 150?
Okay. So if you're in Smith County.
That's not speeding, that's reckless.
Now reckless driving. All right.
Okay,
Reckless driving, you can go to jail for, but not speeding by itself. All right. Texting while driving. You cannot be on-site arrested for texting while driving.
That seems unreasonable. Probably should take him to jail.
Well, maybe.
You know how many times I'm riding my motorcycle and I'm like, what is going on?
Well, here's another thing with the texting and driving law. We cannot inspect your phone.
Got it. That's a search.
That is an unreasonable and unlawful search.
Okay.
So we cannot inspect your phone. But the texting and driving law is only for sending and receiving digital messages. Now, it can be text messages, you could be Snapchatting, but it's some sort of message, right? So if you're on your phone and you're picking what playlist you want to play on Spotify or you're going to your GPS, that's not texting. Now, how do I prove that? I can't inspect your phone, right?
Wow.
So think about that for a second. But texting and driving, you cannot be on-cited for right there. The last one is open container. If you have an open alcoholic container in your car, but you're not intoxicated, I cannot on-site arrest you for that.
Well, how would you know?
Well, typically, if you have an open container, I'm gonna pull you out and do field sobriety and things like that. So if you pass all your field sobriety and you're like, hey, yeah, just open this. This is all I've had to drink. I can only give you a ticket for it.
Yeah.
Well, dude,
now
I got on a jury selection deal. And almost made it to the jury, and then they were like, I was like the last 20 or 10, 15 people, however many. You get 12 people on a jury, but they keep like a couple extras until it starts, right? And one of the attorneys was like, hey, I got a question for you. Say you get pulled over for a taillight out, and the officer thinks you're drunk, and so you pass the field sobriety test, and then you blow a .09. And I was like, well, if I pass the field sobriety test, why'd I have to blow? And they were like, you can leave. And they sent me on my way. They we don't need you. They're about to, the defendant was like sitting up there like,
he gets
it. He gets that guy. Get that guy,
Well, and I've had some people that were probably close to the line. You can tell when you do the field sobriety test, you're checking for nystagmus, which is the involuntary jerking of the eyes. And you can tell when someone's, all right, you've had a few, but you're not intoxicated, And typically I'm like, look, to make me feel better, you got anyone that can come pick you and your car up?
Yeah.
And they're like, most of the time, they're like, yeah. And if they're like, nah, man, nah. Okay, well, you're on the line, and I don't feel comfortable with you driving, so, you might beat the rap, but you're not going to beat the ride. If you can't find someone else, I'm going to have to take you to jail. I guarantee you they'll find someone that can get them.
Yeah, somewhere.
If you're so close to the line, but I don't think you're intoxicated, I don't necessarily want to take you to jail. I'm not about, if there's gray area, I don't want to take you. I'm all about I'd rather a guilty person go free than a innocent person go to jail. Like, I'll catch the guilty person later, you know. But yeah, if there's any doubt in my mind, I'm not going to take you to jail for it. I'll find another option. So, okay, you've had a few drinks. Yeah, you should probably not be driving. But I also don't think you're intoxicated. But if I let you go from this traffic stop and then you run off the road or you run into a family of 8 in a minivan, now we got a problem, right? That's just my outlook. But those are the only 3 things in Texas that I cannot on-site arrest you for. You know what I can on-site arrest you for? If your windshield wipers don't work, you can go to jail on-site for that.
That doesn't make any sense.
If your license plate light does not illuminate your plate within where it's readable within 50 feet, I can on-site take you to jail for that. If the tread on your tires is too thin, I can on-site and take you to jail for that. Literally every other transportation code offense I can take you to jail for. It's just those 3 things I cannot arrest for. So Daniel Alders, our newly elected state representative who's going to our legislative session this year, he was like, any laws that you think I should know about? And I told him that story. I was like, well, there's only 3 things I can't arrest for. The rest of them I can take you to jail for. And I told him exactly what I just told y'all. He was like, that's crazy. I was like, hey, I didn't write the laws. I'm just telling you how they're written. I was like, but you as a state rep have the ability to tweak them. So,
see, that's crazy because, like, that kind of brings up the whole issue of the inspection, right? Like, that's, I would think that now that we don't have the inspection requirement, I would think now you can take people to jail because thin tires.
It's been like that ever since I've been an officer.
What the heck?
Yep.
Well, luckily you don't hear about people, you know.
No, most officers are not going to abuse that.
And like motorcyclists and cowboys. Anytime I've been around those kind of people and we've gotten pulled over, I'm always like thinking about 15 reasons that we're about to get a ticket or go to jail. And the cops are always like, all right, y'all be good, you know? Yeah. So it's like, I don't know if there's like an unwritten rule about that, you know, but.
Not necessarily. I mean, I know a lot of cops that ride motorcycles.
Yeah.
You know, and of course you get the rookies that are like, oh, all bikers must be, you know, running drugs or be part of a MC and they're doing illegal stuff. And, you know.
They don't ever give it. Just to let everybody know they don't give it away.
Yeah, the just say no to drugs.
They're just earning money.
Yeah.
The just say no to drugs thing is so funny.
The Sons of Anarchy did not help that stereotype.
Oh, gosh. I saw somebody, Sons of Anarchy best the other day.
Oh, no.
And I wanted to laugh in their face.
No, dude. When I see that, like, I usually chase them down and go, you know, and then I just tell them, I'm like, hey, bud, I get it. I thought the show was good, too. But there are some people.
You don't want to fly that flag.
There are some people that aren't live action role playing. There's some people in this universe that ride motorcycles and they will run you off the road. They will take your jacket.
Yes.
They will put hands on you.
Yeah.
And this is a mockery to their lifestyle. Yeah. And like you just don't.
Well, I mean, and
you want to put that in your saddlebag and just take it home, put it on the wall.
Well, and you know, I ride with the Ruffians. Mm-hmm. I'm the vice president of the Ruffians, and the Ruffians is a unit within the Shriners. And we've had times where we've gone to events and stuff, and you might get a club that comes over and is like, "Who are you?" You know, and you just explain, "Dude, we're Shriners. We run for the hospitals for children." Yeah. And usually when you say that, they're like, oh, "Okay, you a club?" Nope. We're a unit under the umbrella of the Shrine. And they're like, okay. But yeah. And, I mean, we have friends that run with some of the big, I'm not going to mention names, but some of the big name, you know, full-blown three-piece patch. Yeah, they know about us. We know about them. They leave us alone. We leave them alone. You know, we run for charity. They know that. And as long as we're not stepping on their toes, they don't care. Yeah, you know? But a lot of it's just mutual respect. You know, don't spit on each other, and if you do, there's going to be problems. If you try to posture and you know bow up to each other, there's always going to be issues.
Well, that brings up. So you're a Shriner and you're a Mason, right?
Yep.
So how long have you been a Mason?
I joined the lodge in 2015. Joined the Shrine in 2016.
Oh, they got you quick. They've been coming after me. I told them, I said, I don't have time.
Dude, the Shrine is amazing. It is a lot more family friendly than the lodge. The lodge is for the men. It is.
Right.
By ancient tradition. The shrine, though, is for the whole family. Really is. And I'm part of the provost competition pistol shooters.
Oh, cool.
We shoot pistols one-handed at 75 feet. I mean, we have a ton of fun, which also sharpens my skills as a law enforcement firearms instructor. But I'm part of the Jeep Patrol, the little tiny cars you see in the parade. I'm one of the guys that rides in the parades in those. In fact, in troop, at the Christmas parade in troop every year, I'm in full uniform riding one of the little Jeeps. Yeah. And everyone gets a kick out of it. Everyone gets a kick out of it. In fact, you can pull it up on my Facebook. I actually get some different flashing lights and stuff and put it on the little tiny shrine car so that it looks like a little tiny patrol car.
Okay.
Yeah. And so all the kids love it. It's great. So, but yeah, we have a ton of fun, and it's all about the brotherhood of man under the fatherhood of God. Hope, faith, and charity. And a lot of people hear Freemasons. You can go down the conspiracy rabbit hole. All of it is just false. The only book on the altar in a lodge is the Holy Bible, at least in Texas.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah. Now, according to our beliefs and our philosophy, anyone who believes in a monotheistic God can be a Mason. We are not a religion. We are simply, you have to be religious and believe in a God to be a member.
Yeah.
And you are responsible for answering to your God. But with some of the oaths and obligations and the brotherhood and all, if you're an atheist, you can't be a Mason because you don't actually believe in anything.
Right.
You got to believe in something if you want to make a difference in the world.
Yeah.
And that's what Masonry is. It's all about wanting to make a difference in the world. I love the conspiracy theories, though, that talk about...
I've been down them.
Oh, yeah.
I've been down them.
I love the conspiracy theories that they're trying to take over the world, New World Order. And I'm like, dude, that was like 250 years ago.
That's when Albert Pike was
and they're like, wait, what? I was like, you realize the founding fathers were Masons, right?
Yeah.
That founded our country?
Yeah.
Congrats, we won. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you've done some cool stuff though in Masonry, haven't you?
I have.
You've been.
Are y'all allowed to talk about that? Wait a minute. I thought this was secret society stuff.
No.
We are not a secret society. We are we're a society with secrets.
Whoa.
Yeah.
We're not like the Skulls, man.
Yeah, I called Pat one night and I was like, dude, you ought to come down. We're having a stated meeting. I'm cooking. I'm the steward at our lodge.
Do you have green beans?
53. No, dude.
It's not a lodge. It's not a lodge meal without green beans, man.
Look, I don't make green beans. Look, I've made Thai green curry,
nice
Indian curry, Cajun potato soup's what we're having next Thursday. Nice. Not this Thursday, next Thursday week. But yeah, I mean, I make. And
might have to come down just for some of that.
Hey, look, they've been like, that was pretty. What was that soup that you served us the other day? I was like, oh, that was Thai curry. That wasn't soup.
Yeah.
They're like, it was hot.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, get ready,
Yeah.
But yeah, dude.
I'm past master of Dixie Lodge and Troop.
Okay.
And then 2 years ago in 2023, I was the district deputy grand master for 9 different lodges in our area.
Wow.
That was a lot of work.
Yeah, I imagine.
That's a lot of work. 9 lodges is a lot for one person to represent the Grand Lodge for. Most DDGMs are responsible for 4 or 5 lodges, and that is I don't want to say it's a full-time job because it's not, but it's a pretty heavy load. Yeah, 9 was a lot.
But 100 years ago, if you saw somebody wearing a square and compass, you just automatically knew, hey, this is a good, upstanding member of society that wants to help, and then you just knew that. And today there's a disconnect. There's all this conspiracy, and nobody knows anybody that's a Mason anymore. And I go to lodge, and there's a couple guys in our age range.
Yeah.
But it's mostly dudes that have been members for 30, 40, 50 years.
I mean, by our own, Grand Lodge laws and all, you're allowed to talk about it.
Right.
You are just not allowed to spill the beans about, like, modes of recognition, the secret handshakes, whatever you want to call them. You're not allowed to spill the beans about what the ceremonies are and what
because
the memory
it would
work is.
Ruin the opportunity for somebody to actually experience it.
But I'll tell you right now, if you were to Google it,
You can find
if you can find the right one, you'll find the right one.
Yeah.
But if you Google it and you find the wrong one, you're going to go down the conspiracy rabbit hole.
Right.
But really, the only reason we keep those secrets is to know that we can trust each other with those secrets.
Yeah.
Right.
You know? And most of it is just biblical history.
Yeah.
It's stuff that if you read the Bible, you'll know everything about it anyway.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, Freemasonry originates from the original builders of King Solomon's Temple. Mm-hmm. Now, no one really knows how old Freemasonry is.
Right.
You know, we originated with that, but we don't know if that's where we started. We don't know if we use that as symbolism in what we do. The oldest document so far in history that actually refers to Freemasonry is the Regis poem of the 1300s.
Okay.
So we know
So
that
they
it
don't
existed.
have anything before that.
No.
Okay.
But back then, Freemasonry didn't actually start documenting their own history until the 1700s.
Right. Yeah.
And everything's been mouth to ear.
Yes.
You know, so it's an oral tradition.
Yeah.
If you believe that the Bible made it 400 years before it got written down, then you've got to understand
From the instructive tongue of the instructor to
Yeah.
the attentive ear of the pupil.
gives you an opportunity to interface with the community, to serve people.
Yes.
I mean, that's the whole
And
point.
the whole point is charity.
Yeah.
It's charity and service to others. It's all that is our credo. It is.
Widows and children.
Well, and,
you know?
and just a little bit of history here. The Texas lodges were the first public school system in Texas.
Yeah.
Our lodges were only used, and this is kind of interesting. We call it a blue lodge, which is what our home lodges are, and we call it a blue lodge because they used to meet under the light of the full moon, the blue moon, before the times of electricity. You know, but most lodges only meet once a month. So what are you doing with the building the rest of the time?
School.
It was a public school. So the first floor would be the schoolhouse, and the second floor would be the lodge room.
And St. John's 53 was the school in Tyler before Tyler started public schools. The lodge I go to, I mean, there's just, if you're into history, I'll just say this, like, I'm not promoting anything, but like, if you're into history and you believe in God, it's one of the coolest things
really
you can go
is.
check out. It's really interesting.
Oh man, in Troop, we have some really old historical buildings in Troop, and if you go on the back side of some of those buildings, you will see the maker's mark, and it was a Mason that made it.
Yeah.
And their actual mark is in the Book of Marks in the lodge. Yeah, and we have books of Mark. We have a Book of Marks that go all the way back to the early 1800s. Yeah. So yeah, it's really interesting stuff, and I love history.
Well, I think something that came up, and I might have to cut this or I might not, but like, you know, they're going to be building that courthouse here in Smith County, and we've asked to be there for the leveling of the first stone.
Yep.
And they've told us, no, we can't do it. You can't do it because then we have to let the atheists and everybody else come and do their little ceremonies. The judge said that.
Is that Judge Franklin?
I don't know. I wasn't listening real good last time I was there, but Dylan Falmer was talking about it.
Yeah.
And he's our
District
DDG now.
There's way too many names right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's okay. I think we can say that stuff.
If you actually go to the front door of the Cherokee County Jail, it'll say this building was leveled by the Grand Lodge of Texas.
Yes.
You know, and for hundreds of years, it's been schools, government buildings, etc. Has been the first stone of the building, which is in the northeast corner of the building, is laid by the Grand Lodge of Texas. The problem is that as society has progressed, everyone gets so offended over everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's where modern day politicians are like, it could open up a can of worms for me later. So, you know.
And I agree with that. And I think that as more of the conspiracy around Freemasonry comes about, because my grandfather was a Freemason.
There's probably documents. You could probably do some research and find out.
I guarantee you the Grand Lodge of Texas could do a genealogical
definitely
research.
But all the conspiracies that get centered around there's pagan symbolism in Christianity. There's pagan symbolism in Islam. There is pagan symbolism in Freemasonry. That's the people that we were and that we came out of.
Well, and everything in Masonry, symbolic, has a meaning. I mean, everything.
Absolutely.
the ones you see on the square and compasses. You've got your square and your compass.
Yeah.
And the compasses are to circumscribe your desires and keep your passions within due bounds. Our working tools and what they mean are not secret.
Right.
The square is to square your actions by the square of virtue towards all mankind.
Yeah.
So whenever you start to see like the secretism, more of the conspiracies risen up around it, and I'll be honest, it sounds like a bunch of wives were mad at their husbands because they weren't telling them what was going on in there.
Probably.
And they was going spinning a yarn, just making up whatever they possibly can.
I thought that too. And then I showed up and I found out that the wives also have,
the Eastern Star.
the Eastern Star.
Which, so the Order of the Eastern Star.
Which is super interesting. Like,
It is.
I heard one of them talking about it. Like they were downstairs in the basement at St. John's 53, like 30 years ago, and they were wearing like robes and things. And they were like, some kids broke in and went downstairs and like, they turned around. They all had hoods on, and the kids were just like, "Nope." And they ran.
Well, probably the 5-pointed star also.
Yeah, that would definitely. I'd get the heebie-jeebies.
So, funny thing, because I do want to mention that everyone sees the Eastern Star's 5-pointed star, and they're like, "Well, it's inverted." It's not inverted.
Yeah.
It's that no one point of the star is higher than the others.
Yeah,
and it has to do with the heroines of the Bible. You're talking about Ada, Ruth, Esther.
Yeah.
I don't remember all of them. But it's all about the women in the Bible who, one way or the other, did something great or made a great sacrifice for the good of mankind. And that's why that is the women's organization, I guess you'd say. And men are part of it too.
but
the women run it.
5-pointed star.
It is. Yeah.
Because it was cheaper and faster to make than a 6-pointed star.
Yeah. But but when people see that and it's got a point going down, but not one going straight up, everyone assumes Satanism, paganism. It's not. It's just that no one point of the
I think that
star is above the others.
Satanism has really done a pretty good job at stealing a lot of things.
For sure.
A lot of symbols that are within the Bible that are outside of the Bible.
Just look at the rainbow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Like you can take anything and twist it any which way you want.
God's promise for no more rain and
let me tell you,
or no more floods.
Let me tell you about the growth that is going on in my life, because this conversation 5 years ago, y'all would not be talking to the same guy. I'd be like, you got to read this, you got to read this, you got to read this, you got to go down this.
What about morals and dogma? What about morals and dogma?
Which is all symbolism and philosophy.
Yeah. And whenever you start to actually look at the reality of things, that these are not people that are just put up into higher places. Yeah, like, okay, there may be some people in the Illuminati that are Freemasons.
I mean, maybe. I wouldn't know. Illuminati has nothing to do with us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, y'all aren't like, all right, once a month we all meet, but then once a year, then we're all going to meet with the Illuminati, and then we're going to talk about the real stuff. Like that's not the concept, and I've never gotten that.
Everyone I've ever met who claimed to be Illuminati were straight crazy.
Exactly.
Straight
crazy.
Yeah, like everybody you met that claimed to be Illuminati, you were arresting them.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and I mean, Illuminati might exist. I don't know, but I don't know anything about them. I don't know. It has nothing to do with me.
Exactly. Yeah. I have no question that it exists, but also I know that like Joe Schmo or you like in the local lodge, y'all don't know nothing about that. It's
that's the argument that you hear. It's well, you just haven't gotten high.
Oh,
enough.
Yeah, you haven't got to 33rd degree.
Yeah.
Well, I have a good friend.
I'm a 32nd degree.
Yeah.
And
the 33rd degree is just it's an honorary degree.
Yeah. And I've got a buddy that is.
Yeah.
Joe. And we're going to have him on. He said he'd come on.
Joe Barron?
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, Joe is awesome. Such a great guy.
He said he would come on. And like Joe is the reason that I made it past Entered Apprentice.
Yeah. Just saying, anyone listening, if you do listen to the podcast with Joe Barron, you might want to turn your bass down because that man's voice.
So he likes it.
I'm going to have to EQ it.
I'm telling you.
Sometimes I can't understand what he says.
His voice is just such a. Honestly, like.
Is that the demons in his throat or what?
No.
Let me just tell
Joe's
you.
voice is so
one of the
soothing.
coolest things. One of the coolest things is to listen to Joe Barron read King James,
Yes.
Old Testament King James Bible verses. And I mean, you're just like, Yep. Okay. I don't know what he said, but I agree. You know, like it's like he's got a voice on him, bro.
And
he's
Joe,
gonna give you a run for your money. Yeah.
Joe is so brilliant too. He's
smart,
such a smart guy. He really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was district instructor for a while, and that man knows his stuff.
Yeah, he does. Yeah,
He's got it all locked in his mind.
What was his job? He worked for
Kelly Springfield for a while.
Yeah, but he was
and then he worked as maintenance for DPS.
Yeah, he did maintenance for like a big area of DPS. So he was like the top dog. He was over on university, you know, but he was like in charge of a bunch of places. He was like one of those guys that like sets up massive machinery like to the thousandth. Huh? No. Like, you know, like
Oh, like a machinist. I can tell you that man, he figures things. He figures things out.
Yeah.
You know, it's just he's so smart.
Oh, a millwright.
yes.
That's it.
Yeah, Joe Barron's a millwright.
Millwright.
Okay, a
That's
millwright. Perfect. I knew you'd know.
Yeah.
That is one of the most amazing. Like when you get them talking about the things that they do, they set up machinery within half a degree, within a millimeter, and they do it with like sledgehammers and power tools.
Yeah,
like
and come along.
amazing. So I'll call him. I'm like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, I'm in North Carolina. I'm helping the linemen. You know, I'm like, what are you doing, dude?
Yeah.
That's what he does. He just helps people.
Joe is fantastic.
Dude, he can pray too.
Yes.
You know, he can pray.
Well, and he's a chaplain in almost every group we're part of.
So are y'all allowed to like say the God of the Bible, like the God of Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham? Like,
In Texas, it is.
okay, I was curious. I didn't know if that went from state
So,
to state.
In Texas Masonry, we require that you believe in a monotheistic God. In other states, you can believe in polytheism. Yeah. So you could be a pagan and believe in, the Nordic gods if you wanted to,
or the mystics,
Yeah. It's all about just believing in a higher power, and that's why we are not a religion. Right. You have to be religious to join, but we are not ourselves a religion.
And the Catholics,
did
not like us.
No, and they're it's gotten better in recent history, but for the longest time, the Catholics actually had people that would try to hunt down Masons.
Yeah, I believe that. The Jesuits
did do it.
Yeah.
If you actually like look into the Jesuits and stuff, like not saying that all the Jesuits are bad, but
we're always like disclaimer and
there's
stuff.
a lot of things like within their creed that I've always just been kind of like, that does not sound like a lover of humanity. Right. That sounds like a lover of religion who is trying to perpetuate their religion under any circumstances.
Well, and so I told you all about my foster dad, Mike. He grew up in the Catholic Church in New Orleans.
Oh, New Orleans.
And then he became a minister with the Church of Christ.
Okay.
And he said that when he became a minister, his family pretty much disowned him. And his family ended up afterwards realizing it's not a cult. It's a godly religion. Yeah. And so they were good then. And that was one thing we had talked about. And I have family that are Catholics, and I have many friends who are Catholics. I have no problem with that. My personal belief, though, is any church that tells you don't read the Bible for yourself, go talk to your priest so they can explain it to you.
Yeah,
I have a problem with.
Yeah. Then like the Pope brought the South American lady with like an idol thing.
Yeah,
and he was
absolutely.
like, all gods are God or something. He said this. The Pope said this
recently,
like a month ago. A month ago,
he had a whole ritual for.
He let him do it
for like Aztec
in
gods
the Vatican.
Really,
at the Vatican. Yeah, and so that's where.
Like, so we're kind of like, yo.
Like I've never subscribed to Catholicism. My grandmother was a Catholic, but she never like adored whatever the Pope said. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like she had her faith in Christ.
I think you can be a Christian and be a Catholic, but I don't think being a Catholic makes you a Christian.
I agree with that.
You see what I'm saying?
I do.
Like, why are we praying to Mary? I'm confused, and I'm not trying to drag you down
I've had the same.
hole,
No,
I'm just confused about it.
I've had the same thoughts.
Maybe we should, dude.
Mary was the mother of God, but Mary was not God.
We should probably go to like the diocese over here,
and
be like, "Yo, y'all want to come on our podcast?"
Yeah, honestly, they probably would.
Yeah, didn't they?
As long as it's respectful.
I'm not
good.
I'd never be disrespectful.
No. But that would be their concern, I'm sure.
I guess.
But
I mean,
I
they
can
must not
argue.
be concerned about much.
that's
they
like-
got this voodoo stuff
That's the
going
thing.
on.
I can argue.
Yeah.
Like a lot.
Well, that's like the
People
Mormons.
get hurt about that.
When I lived in Tyler at the
Yeah.
apartments, I used to love when they'd come knock on my door.
Knock, knock, knock.
And I'd be like, they're like, do you have a minute to talk? I was like, I sure do. You want
yeah,
some tea?
absolutely.
Come on in.
I'll
Let's
put
talk.
on- just put on a kettle.
And, talk about.
But they don't ever want to they don't ever when they come to my house, they didn't want to talk about the stuff. I want to talk about the stuff.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you're watching football? What game is this? I'm like, no,
I don't care about that.
I got this Bible.
I want to
Hey,
know what y'all say about Jesus.
I got a teen study Bible. Let's pull it out real quick.
Let's talk about the verse in Revelation that says, don't
Yeah.
add or take away from this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have another book. They're like, oh, no, it's not like that. I was like, I'm
then-
literally looking at the cover and it's saying another testament of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, the fact that this book was revealed to Joseph Smith, who was the only one who could actually translate and read this book.
Well, it was
the tablets,
the golden
the
tablets.
golden tablets.
And he goes into town to tell everyone about it. When he comes back, he's
And
like,
he said, I'm
they're
gonna be-
gone.
he
But
said-
I remember everything. It's cool.
Exactly.
He said, I'm going to be like the Muhammad of Christianity. He compared himself to Muhammad. What a weird thing to do.
Well, and even in Islam and Christianity, if you look
Yeah, I mean, if you look at
on paper,
on the
their
Torah,
origins are not all that different.
No, they're not.
I mean,
Well, the Abrahamic religions are very similar.
well, yeah, but think about it this way. When it comes to Christianity, and this is the way I equate it. Like, obviously, we're very different. I don't subscribe to their belief system, but I have respect for anyone who does. Christianity is what? Repent and live, right? What is theirs? Repent or die,
Repent or die.
or
It's spread by the sword, for sure.
yes. It's believe and be saved versus believe or die, and on paper, in old translations, those two things are not very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Now,
got
and
you.
put into practice, it is very different.
Yeah. And I read the Quran years ago, and it's a lot harder to read. For me, things aren't chronological like they are in our Bible. So that throws a lot of people off. I have no respect for the Quran. I will say that publicly.
Well, if you look at what people call extremists, really they're the only ones that are following that religion.
the
to
truth. Yeah, the true core of what their religion is. And everybody in the Middle East lives under Sharia law. Like in England, there's sections in London that police won't even go into because Sharia law is already established
Well,
there.
and I know there have been places in the U.S. that have talked about trying
Yes.
to have their own Sharia law in certain subdivisions and certain.
dangerous.
It is.
It is so dangerous. The only way that you can honor the Quran is by reading it in Arabic. You have to point in a certain direction to pray. All these individual requirements, you have to do it this way. That's whenever the religion takes over.
Yeah.
I lived in Australia for 3 years. I was in a factory rolling out steel for 30 days. And there was a guy in there who saw my cross on my arm and that was like, "Oh, are you religious?" I said, "No, I have a relationship with Jesus Christ." And I was like, man, there's about to be a revival spark out in Melbourne and everything. And this dude looked at me and he said, "Well, what's the difference in your relationship with Christ and the Muslims' relationship with Muhammad?" And I didn't have an answer.
Christ is God. Muhammad was a prophet.
Well, I know that now.
Yeah.
But
Christ
at
is
the
alive,
time,
Muhammad's dead.
yeah, and at the time, I had no idea, but that caused a question within me to make me say, all right, I need to really get a grasp on this. And understanding that Jesus' atonement on the cross is all that we needed.
Yeah.
The Quran, it also points back to the Bible, but in a way that is so backhanded.
It's a derivative of our Bible.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
they'll
100%.
even say in their own book, hey, if you have any questions to this, just go back to what the God of the Jews talked about. But then
Which
they're
is
talking
interesting
about
since
killing
Islam
Jews.
and the Jews are so
Exactly,
against each other.
and that's the thing. You have different portions where Muhammad went and raided these areas and was successful in his raids and implemented Sharia law. And then he went to these other areas where he tried to sack the cities and he wasn't successful. So he had to do the Kuth way of getting his religion into it and being like, oh, it's love, acceptance, blah, 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 blah. And then you have an increase in population of Muslims and then Sharia law is implemented.
Right.
And then that's when the true religion comes out. So
Like, I don't want to come across as someone who is disrespectful to a Muslim because of the religion. I'm disrespectful to the religion because I love Muslims, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get it.
Because I see these people as image bearers of God, regardless of their code and creed and all that kind of stuff. They are in a fallen state just like I am. We have to come out of that fallen state. We have to pursue who Jesus was and tell people about what he has done for the whole world.
Yeah.
Jesus changed my life.
Yeah.
He came in the form of love. God had the plan from the very beginning. When Jesus came along, the sacrificial system has been set up this way. This is what I'm going to be doing, even down to who they
Jesus
delivered.
even said that the old law was pinned to the cross with him.
Yeah, the sacrifice was delivered to the high priest. That was the tradition. It was the sacrifice was always taken to the high priest. Well, who was Jesus taken to whenever he was captured? He was taken to the high priest.
Yeah.
The road that they would bring the sacrifices down, where do you think that they laid the palms down for him to walk in on? It was the same road behind the temple. He fulfilled every sacrificial system that God had put in place.
And riddle me this. Imagine seeing your own child on a cross
Yeah.
and knowing that this has to happen for all of mankind and choosing not to act because you love the whole world
Yes.
and not just your son.
Yeah. Jesus was the only one who could be that sacrifice. No matter what good works that we do, our deeds are as filthy rags to a holy God. He stepped down into time and moved amongst his people, and his people actually rejected him. They pushed him away.
That's why they crowned him King of the Jews on the cross.
The more that he fulfilled. And you start to understand that it's a lot bigger than what we can even imagine. And we can sit here and talk about all night about the stuff that he did. We can get out our Bibles and read it. That's where faith comes into it. I don't have to read about Jesus dying on the cross every single day.
There are some things that are proven by history.
Yeah.
You know, historical documents prove it. I mean, the Bible is not one book.
Right.
It is a library of 37 books.
66.
66, sorry. 37 in the Old Testament.
Wait a minute, is that a Mason Bible you're talking about now?
Sorry. 66 books. So many different authors, so many different subject matter. I mean,
Different continents.
Yes.
Everything.
Law, history, poetry, philosophy, ethics, you know, all of it just comes together. But I mean, even like the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah.
That were
They confirm
just found.
Yeah.
Not too long ago. All these different cultures and all collaborate into the same story, right? So there's historical data that show that all these different things happen, all right? But it takes faith to believe, okay, this was God or the Son of God or the Holy Trinity, you know, all one and one the same. You have to choose to believe it,
Right.
versus being proven to you. And if it was proven to you, then there would be no need for faith.
And I think
but the first generation church, they knew him. They saw him. They watched him die. And they buried him. And then they talked with him and hung out with him and had lunch with him.
Yeah.
and then testified about him.
Yeah, I misspoke when I said the books. I was like, Old Testament has 39 books,
No.
New Testament 27 books.
You're good.
Look,
You're
dude.
good. We're not Bible scholars.
I don't know that. Yeah.
I actually present the Bibles to the new Masons, so I should know that. Yeah.
Well, have you had opportunity or experience through your function as a peace officer to witness to people?
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, and have you seen any fruit from that?
Yes. So actually, I'll share a story with you that there's an old man in troop, old black man. He is raising 3 of his grandchildren. He's old. He's got a cane. He doesn't get around very well. His granddaughter went to church one day, and apparently some kid made a racist comment to her, and she was really upset. I've known this old man for a while. He came to the police station. I was like, hey, would you talk to her? You know, she's worried about racism, and because of one comment, now she thinks all white people hate her, this and that. The thing that stuck with me the most, he told his granddaughter, he's like, you see this man here? He's like, he and I are 2 different colors. He's like, we're both brothers under God. Amen.
Yeah.
And hearing that side, because we're white dudes. I understand that I have not had to suffer through or survive through some of the trials and tribulations that others have, and a lot of times things just fly over our heads because we've not lived it, right? Hearing that, and then him using me in one of those life lessons, I was like, oh, this is a life lesson going on right now.
Oh, I didn't learn this too.
I am a witness of a life lesson. This is happening right now. Awesome. I'll get to be part of this, And I told her, I was like, I'll tell you right now. I was like, we're all Christians. God loves us all the same. Doesn't matter what's on the outside. I was like, I love you as a sister in Christ. I love your grandfather as a brother in Christ. I was like, what we look like has nothing to do with it. That impacted me more than I think it impacted her. Because
servants
see
the miracles.
Yeah, the servants see the miracles. Yeah, if you look at the first miracle, which is the painting that we saw last week, I'll show you a picture. But God turned water to wine, or Jesus turned water to wine, and none of the people at the party saw that, but the servants.
Yeah,
the servants did. They're the ones that filled the vessels with water, and and we've seen countless, examples of that through volunteer, through ministry, through we've been talking about personal ministry. For me, for sure, this podcast is part of that, like connecting with people, sharing stories, hearing people's stories, and you get a ton of opportunity. We're doing an intentional living class at church right now. My wife and I have been going to it, and it's been fun to watch her show God's love,
The real key to it, I think, is if I'm going to talk about religion, talk about God's love, I'll ask, are you religious at all? Do you belong to a church? And if they say yes, then okay. Chances are they're not going to try to sue me for preaching to them. When I was a school resource officer, the counselor came to me and was like, would you come talk to this kid here? Like, he was just making some bad choices, nothing major. I mean, this is little kid, elementary school.
Yeah.
And I was like, so what's going on? And he said that the demons have me.
Oh.
I was like, okay, tell me what that means to you. And he was like, I have a demon inside me.
Who told you that?
I was like, okay. And who said that? And he was like, no one, I just know it. I was like, well, maybe. I was like, but you hear the saying when we talk about we all have our demons. It's like, that doesn't mean you're actually possessed by one. It means that you have to fight those bad choices.
Right.
Something bad enters your head, it's up to you to try to fight it off and say, no, I'm not going to do that. I was like, that's what that means. It doesn't mean you're actually a demon or that you actually have a demon controlling you. You're in control of yourself. And so that was another conversation that really affected me, because I feel like he had a better understanding, and I was like, dude, talking to you right now, you're not a demon.
Yeah.
A demon wouldn't let you talk to me like this. But yeah, and I feel like that made a difference in his life too. He was like 4th grade, 5th grade, something like that. Old enough to understand what we were talking about. Obviously you wouldn't have that talk with like a pre-K kid.
Yeah.
Right.
But
what's next? When's election?
So the election is March.
I want to put your flyers right out. I'll put your.
I got to get them made first.
I got a business in Troop that I'm involved with, so I'll put you out
nice.
there.
Yeah, please do. So the state has not released the official days yet, but if it follows the curve that it has for the past decade, then it'll be March 3rd of 2026.
Okay.
But yeah, I have a website, Kyle Stowers for jp3.com. Facebook, same thing. I do want to go back, though. You had asked me to break down the different peace officers. So state troopers, obviously, they do the public roads. Sorry, it's been in the back of my mind.
I mean,
the constables.
You're like J.D. Vance level, like remembering questions.
Yeah.
I can quote to you the beginning paragraph of Canterbury Tales that I had to memorize in the 8th grade.
This is why I tell people all the time, don't talk to the police. Like, I've got some friends that they're good people, but they sure enough need to have an attorney if the cops want to talk to them.
I mean, that's fair.
Because anyway. Yeah,
But
back to the thing.
Highway Patrol, obviously, state troopers, we know what they do. They patrol the public roadways all over the state. They also take care of security and all for the governor. They act as the Secret Service for the governor. Then you'd asked about the constables. The constables oversee civil matters in the counties that they're in. And they also enforce the orders of the Justice of the Peace.
Are they elected?
The constable himself is.
Okay.
His deputies are appointed.
Okay.
And then you have city police officers, and sheriff's deputies are a lot of the same. We enforce criminal law, take calls, enforce traffic laws. The sheriff himself is considered the custodian of all inmates for the county. Mm-hmm. And so that's why the jail falls under the purview of the sheriff's office.
Okay.
And the sheriff is also an elected position, but his deputies are appointed. And then city marshals are
appointed, or like you get hired in to be a sheriff's deputy, right?
Yep.
You like apply to it.
You apply to it, yeah. Which is an appointment, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got
it's
it.
like I'm appointed because I was hired.
And you're approved
Right.
to get hired.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then you have like the city marshals. Primarily, the marshals are fugitive apprehension. They go after people with warrants, things like that. And the city marshals are state peace officers. If you're talking about U.S. marshals, those are federal agents.
Yeah.
And they do the same thing. They go after fugitives. But that's kind of the breakdown of the different law enforcement. And we're all on the same level. Like a lot of people think, well, the county's above the city. No, we have completely different jurisdictions and completely different roles.
Got it.
The sheriff's deputies and the deputy constables also serve civil papers, protective orders, things like that. If there's any court documents that have to be served to someone, usually it's going to be a constable or a sheriff. Make sense?
So if I'm like driving on 635 in Dallas and I see a Troop PD car, I can go 10 over because he can't.
Actually,
He could pull me over.
he can. So the Code of Criminal Procedure says that we are Texas peace officers, and if we are to stop or detain someone or make an arrest, we have to call the agency of the jurisdiction we're in. So let's say we're in Tyler,
Okay.
and I'm on my way to the courts for whatever reason, I see something. Can I stop you because you're a safety hazard? Yes. If I think that you need a ticket, though, I have to call Tyler PD because I'm in their turf. They have to come and issue it.
Got it. Have you ever pulled over another officer?
I have stopped off-duty officers all the time.
And then you're just like, hey, how's the kids in them? And you just let them go?
I mean, sometimes. It depends.
Sometimes they get a ticket.
One thing that really gets me, though, is like if you stop someone and before you've even walked up to the car, they're hanging their badge out the window.
Yeah.
And that, I'm like, all right, that's an abuse of your power. I'm like, I got one of those too. License, proof of insurance, please.
Yeah.
Just because, like, no, come on, man, don't do that. Most of the time, though, they're like, oh, I'm sorry, man. Yeah, I was not paying attention. Okay, who you work for? Well, I work for such agency. All right, man, you know better.
Yeah.
Do better.
I tried to name drop you one time. It didn't work. They just gave me a
It normally doesn't.
Yeah. I think I got the ticket just because I said
You might have.
But
because
it
a lot
was
of
the
officers
truth.
hate
I
that.
had just had dinner with you.
I know.
I just had
Yeah.
dinner with this guy. He's like, oh, really? Then he got all weird about it. And my Glock was just like magneted to my gas tank. So, he was weird about that too.
Yeah, after you texted me, he actually texted me.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, he was
And he was like, hey, do you know this guy? I was like, I do. And I also know you just stopped him. He's like, all right. He's like, I wasn't sure. He's like, everyone tries to name drop someone. I was like, yeah, okay. I was like, no, I actually did just have dinner with him.
I was like,
Yeah, we had just
telling
eaten.
the truth.
We had just eaten at Tio Juanita's. Yeah.
Assume you get elected in March of 26. You get elected and you become the Justice of the Peace for Precinct 3 in Smith County, Texas. Like, has that always been your dream? Is that like your goal and things? Or, I mean, what's going on? I mean, what are you going to do with that?
It's something I've thought about doing for a long time. And
you think God's called you to do this?
I do. So actually, my foster mom, Nora, she's had 3 or 4 members of her family that were JPs.
Really?
From where she's from, yeah.
So it's like almost like a historical.
Yeah.
It's like a lineage.
But that wasn't one of the reasons. I didn't even know that until I started making my run. She's like,
No
oh, that's
way.
interesting, yeah. It's something I've thought about for a while. I've talked to, like, Sean Murray is my current chief of police. I've talked to him about it. I've talked to Pat Hendricks, my former chief of police. And Pat Hendricks is actually my campaign treasurer.
He must be a good guy. His name's Pat.
Yeah.
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 Well, he retired from the sheriff's office. He was chief investigator. He was a sergeant with the criminal investigative division and did 20 years there. He worked a whole lot of different homicides and all that. And then,
Wow.
do y'all know much about Troop PD and the old school Troop PD?
I've heard stories.
In 2006, Texas Rangers and FBI shut down the Troop Police Department for corruption. Fired everyone. Several went to jail, prison. And so Chief Hendricks.
You knew this?
Yeah.
Chief Hendricks came in with Sean Murray, who's now my chief, and then I came in 2 years after that, and it was a mess. The city was a mess. I mean, the chief of police back then was taking evidence out of the evidence locker, taking it home with him if he liked it. So he was getting guns and all kinds of stuff, and he was just keeping it. His second in command was actually taking dope off the streets and then reselling it out of the trunk of his patrol car to make a profit.
Wow.
I think I did see something about that. I think I did see something about that.
So it was pretty messy. Yeah. And so it took years for us to regain the trust of the citizens. Mm-hmm. Now we have it, and you can tell some of the originals that came in those first few years, which there's only like 3 of us left. It's, my chief, Sean Murray, me, and then our sergeant, Nathan Brown. He came in 5 years after me, and it was still pretty. We were rocking and rolling. I mean, we were going where we couldn't go a week without having to actually fight somebody,
Wow.
And you start fighting one, the whole family would come out. So you'd have 100 people around you waiting for someone else to show up.
And you're just waiting for backup.
Yep. I don't know how many times we would have someone putting handcuffs on the ground and their family surrounding us telling us to let them go. And you just pull your gun and say, y'all better stay back until you can get another unit there to help you get them to the car without having to fight everybody.
Yeah.
It's not like that now. Now everyone pretty much respects us, and they know, no, we're going to leave them alone.
Yeah.
That was something we had to earn. We had to earn their trust, we earn their respect, and it wasn't so much as they were trying to get their loved one out of it, so much as they just didn't trust us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, understandable.
Yeah, sure, Bobby's hyped up on dope right now, but that's completely beside the point.
Right.
I don't like you. That's why.
Yeah.
I don't understand ranks, like military ranks, police ranks, but like lieutenant's like up there, right?
I am the second in command of the troop police department.
Whoa.
Good to know.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's chief, lieutenant, sergeant, and then patrol. And I'm the lieutenant. I'm the second in command.
Corporal's patrol, right?
We used to have a corporal, but so a couple of years ago, Chief Hendricks left and went to Bullard ISD. He felt God was calling him there. His wife works for Bullard ISD, and that was part of it.
Got it.
2 of our officers went with him to work over there, and we had already had one opening, so we went from a 10-man department down to 4 officers.
Oh, wow.
Including the chief, me, and the sergeant, and 1 patrolman.
So they're working you.
So we were hurting, let me tell you. Now we're back up to 6, and we have 1 in the academy who graduates in March, and we're looking forward for him coming on because then we'll be fully staffed. It's 7. At the same time, Troop ISD started their own police department, and we lost 2 of our officers to them.
Got it.
Yeah.
So that was the other 2. It was, man, we were on call nonstop. And we weren't
working you to death. Wow.
We were to the point where just so we could send an officer home to go get some sleep, we were on call. Yeah. And so we were all taking turns being on call on our days off to be able to go handle something if it came up. So once we get this last one out of the academy, I will start training him, and once he's trained up, we'll be fully staffed because right now we are back up to 24-hour coverage, but we can't take off for vacation. We can't go on a vacation, can't go to schools. If you call in sick, that means that someone else has to cover your spot, and you have to cover theirs later.
Right.
So, right now I have enough vacation, holiday, and comp time that I could take off for 6 months and still get a check.
But you'll never get to
Wow.
And I'll never get to use
You'll
it.
I will never get to use it.
Yeah.
Can you burn it and then just go to work and like get double?
Nope.
They've got a rule that says you can't do that?
Yep.
Well, then it's like, what are they going to do? They just beat you up?
I mean, once we're fully staffed, I can start just burning some time and have. I told my chief, I was like, I'm going to have a staycation once we're fully staffed. I was like, I'm going to take 2 weeks off and do nothing but play on my tractor at the house.
What's the next step? Because you're second, so you could become a chief.
I could, and I have. I'm going to say I've been offered the job. I've been highly encouraged to apply for several chief spots around the area.
Because you've got the experience.
I do. I have the experience.
And because you were in a smaller municipality, you've got a lot of other hats that you could put on, a lot of other expertise, that maybe just a regular old patrol guy didn't get.
But I am not a traffic hound for the sake of writing citations for revenue.
Yeah.
Got it.
I am against that.
Yep.
I don't think that citations should be necessarily a revenue generator.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Someone gets a
completely
ticket.
agree with that.
Someone gets a ticket because they deserved a ticket, not because, oh crap, we got to make payroll.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so some of the other agencies don't necessarily subscribe to that same mindset.
Got it.
There are some agencies that a third of their budget comes from citation revenue.
And they have 3-letter names.
I'm not mentioning who they are.
I didn't say anything. I just said 3-letter name.
Now, here's the real kicker, though. Even if the leadership there doesn't want that, what do? You lose a third of your budget. That means you lose half your police force. So what do? You know?
You have to maintain.
You have to. It's a lose-lose situation.
Yeah.
It really is. When that opportunity arose, I was like, I don't want to be put in that situation.
Yeah.
Because you have your beliefs on one side, but on the other, you're like, I don't want to have to fire someone because we didn't make payroll. I don't want to, at what point, what's the middle ground? And there's not a good middle ground. It's one or the other. You either maintain your full staff and 24-hour service to the citizens, or you don't.
So you could be a commissioner or
commissioners. They are also elected, and I know several of our Smith County commissioners, and they are fantastic people.
Yeah.
But they primarily deal with budget.
Got it.
That is, so if you think of it like a city council and a mayor, well, the county judge is the mayor of the county, and the commissioners are the city council members of the county.
Got it.
That's basically what that is.
Okay.
I don't see myself doing anything outside of law enforcement. And I see justice of the peace. I see that as another extension of law enforcement.
Got it.
I do.
Not only have you had a lot of experience in law enforcement, but you've got military. You're a member of the community. And you're just a good guy.
I try.
No, I mean, I think that we can say that. Anybody that's listening to this probably can tell. You were in foster care. You didn't have a silver spoon,
I did not.
You haven't had probably just the easiest road ever. And you still chose to do the right thing.
You had every opportunity to be an asshole.
I have.
You had every opportunity to be somebody.
And if you ask
the bottom of the,
if you ask my wife,
the barrel, not asshole. That's not the wrong.
If you ask my wife when we first met, she would have said that exact word.
Yeah, exactly.
But you didn't give her a ticket or anything.
I did not.
You
No.
just said, hey, you got to move your car.
Yeah.
If you can move into this next level.
Well, you had asked about my possibly being chief of police.
Right.
And Chief Murray, my current chief, is a fantastic leader.
Yeah.
And I see him being at Troop for the next 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
I would never want to try to fight him for that role whatsoever.
Right.
He's deserved it. He's earned it. I say he deserves it. He has earned it. Yeah, that is his spot. And he is doing fantastic in that role. But I'm still on the street.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to take the gun belt off. I'm ready to
Yeah, I mean, you're number
the vest
2,
off.
but you're still running patrol.
I am.
Right?
I think there's something to be said in that, being willing to subject yourself under the person who is your authority.
Yeah.
Because it seems like so many people, I hear about it all the time, where a kid will start working somewhere and then 6 months in, he's like, all right, I'm ready to run the business. I'm going to leave you guys, and then go run business. And it's, okay, yeah, you had the ability to do all that, but the real test is being willing to subject yourself to the authority that you work under.
Yeah.
And not only that, but you've been with Troop PD for a substantial amount of time.
And Sean Murray has been my supervisor since day one.
Yeah.
So
I've been with the man for 17 years,
Yeah.
and I've worked for him for 17
there
years.
you go.
You know,
So I've said this before, but I definitely judge a man based on how his wife and children treat him, and what their feedback is outside of the house when he's not around. You know what I mean? You can just tell.
Yeah.
You can get a pretty good examination of the fruit by seeing a wife and kids and how they act and how they treat their dad or their husband. I think that the mark of a strong leader is how have you trained and developed and promoted the people that you're in charge of leading. And so what you're telling me is hey, I've got a good boss.
Yeah.
He's been a good boss. I've grown as a man. I've grown as an officer, and
he has taught me everything I know about law enforcement. Yeah, he's a wizard at it.
Yeah,
I make jokes.
Grand wizard?
No, no.
Oh wait, wrong society.
Yeah. No, not part of that one.
no, not at all.
No, I've made jokes, and he's not about putting innocent people in jail, but seeing some of his interviews, I'm like, crap, man, you could get an innocent person to confess. You know,
That's what I'm saying. Don't talk to the police.
Yeah. Like,
Official
he's-
two
Get a
dudes, one
lawyer.
God.
dude,
pod,
he is
don't
so good, man. He is so good at investigations, and he's been teaching Nathan Brown, our sergeant. He's our detective now. For years, as a patrol officer on his days off, he would come in and ride with Murray whenever they were going on an investigation. To, all right, hey, I got to go to the jail and interview this guy. He got locked up. I need to get his side of the story. Okay, cool. Nathan really took to investigations, and that's why he was made the detective. And when Sean had asked us several years ago what we wanted to do, I still had my dog, and at the time I was like, man, I don't want to give up my dog, you know. Now, granted, as time's gone on, you know, I was like, wow, all right, I'm ready for the next thing. But
Yeah. No more dogs.
yeah. And that's the thing. They asked if I wanted another dog back then, and I'll be honest, as I am an animal lover, and when Luke died, a part of me died with him. Like, you know, just, and I have other dogs at home.
It's not the same.
I will never have that kind of companionship with a
partner.
dog. Yeah.
Yeah.
Luke was your partner,
Yes.
just like another officer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that it killed me when he died. And so when my chief asked me, do you want another dog? I was like, man, I don't think I can pick up another leash. I don't. And so I recommended Jason Jones, who's one of our officers. And so he's got Canine Cooper now, who's a silver lab. And I got to help pick him out. That dog is a beautiful dog. Well, here's another fun fact about the Troop Police Department. In God We Trust. We were, I want to say we were the first. If we weren't the first, we were one of the first to put In God We Trust on our patrol cars.
I remember that.
And Pat Hendricks, our former chief, paid for it out of his own pocket so that no one could say he did it with tax dollars.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. And that made a huge statement and a huge impact also.
As a JP,
I plan to carry on all of those, everything I've learned
All the
and taken with
hats.
me. Yeah, I plan to take it all with me for JP. So
what is their what are they over? Like,
so
what
the
do they
Justice
do?
of the Peace handles all Class C offenses in his jurisdiction.
What's that mean? I don't know. What that
Traffic
is.
offenses, like assault Class C. Actually, I got something about that. I'm going to come back to that one.
Okay,
Class C is the lowest level of offenses. It's when it's a ticket.
got it.
And some things you can get arrested for that's Class C. Like I said, you know, you know, whatever. But those would still fall under the purview of the Justice of
So
the Peace.
traffic stuff.
Lots of traffic stuff, parks and wildlife stuff. You know, if you get a ticket for
Fishing in the wrong
fishing,
place.
fishing without a license, things like that. So it's not necessarily just traffic, but it's low-level offenses, right?
Okay.
The Justice of the Peace also handles all civil matters up to $20,000. Civil is like, hey, I owe you $10,000 because I borrowed money from you, and now I'm refusing to pay it back.
Got it.
And so you file a lawsuit against me to get that money back.
Got it.
If it's up to $20,000, the Justice of the Peace handles it. Justice of the Peace handles all evictions in his jurisdiction. So, you know, apartment complexes, et cetera, they have someone who hasn't paid rent in a couple months. They would go to the Justice of the Peace, file for the eviction, and then Justice of the Peace would handle it from there. After so many days, you have to receive notice within so many days. And then once you've received notice, then you have so many days to actually respond to the court for a hearing.
Yeah.
And so it adds up to about 2 weeks to 4 weeks, depending on how fast the timeline can go.
Got it.
Which I'm pretty up to date with all that stuff too.
Yeah.
And then eventually when an eviction is signed by the judge, you have X amount of days to vacate the property. And if not, then the judge will send the constables over and they will remove you from the property and all of your belongings. And also all inquests, which is deceased persons.
Got it.
Like we were talking about that a little bit earlier, which I don't know what it is. Whenever an inquest pops up in Troop, I'm always the one working. And I have worked everything from homicides to someone getting hit by a train to natural causes to, I mean, I've worked everything. I've been part of everything. And I'm not trying to brag, just that is
you've seen
huge,
it all.
huge
Yeah.
generalized, you know, I've seen every type of investigation from start to finish. And Judge Meredith is the current Justice of the Peace. I worked hand in hand with him.
Yeah, when I went and paid that ARP ticket,
You had to go to Troop.
I was like, hey, man, when I got this ticket, I just had dinner with Kyle Stowers. She's like, oh, yeah, a good guy, you know?
So Judge Meredith was actually, and he cannot, by the canons of ethics for judges, he's not allowed to endorse a candidate.
Right.
I've known Judge Meredith for a long time. He was one of our character references when we adopted Madison.
Oh, wow.
You know, Judge Meredith, he's such a great guy. He's fair, and some of the best advice he ever gave me when I told him I was planning to run. He's like, just make sure everyone has their voice heard. He's like, regardless of the ruling you do, regardless of the judgment, make sure that both people feel like they were heard. I was like, yeah. So when people ask me, well, what are you going to do differently if you get that spot? Nothing. If you want change, I'm not your guy.
Yeah.
I plan to run that office the way Judge Meredith has.
Yeah.
And I've already talked to the ladies in that office and told them that their jobs are safe. I was like, I would be an idiot if I come in here and fire the people who know what they're doing before I figured everything out.
Yeah.
I was like, I need y'all to make me look good, you know. And the chief clerk over there, I've talked to her because she was planning on retiring when Judge did. And I was like, if you will do me the favor of just sticking around long enough to hire and train your replacement, I was like, I don't want to be new to this office and just be stuck. I need people with experience, you know. But yeah, so that's what the JP does.
And you're like uniquely qualified for it.
I feel like I am. Yeah. Well, they also
you're steeped in the things that
they also handle truancies. I was a school resource officer.
Yeah.
You know, one topic I do want to bring up before I know it's getting late. Class C's. You know, people are like, okay, it's the lowest level offense. You know, how much does that really matter, right? Think of Class C assault. Texas has Class C assault family violence. Now, that sounds great, right? Yeah, we're busting down family violence. Well, let's break down what Class C assault is. Class C assault is unwanted touch or contact and or threats. Now, what is family violence? Member of the household, or if you are related by blood, sanguinity. So if you have a roommate and he has just really been poking your bear, right? Just really getting on your nerves. And you say something like, dude, I'm about to punch you in the face. Technically, you just committed assault Class C family violence by threat. Okay? Why is that important? Because I'll tell you right now, I mean, it depends on the situation, but for something like that, I wouldn't want to convict, because what's one of the questions every time you go to purchase a firearm?
Yeah.
Have you ever been convicted of any level of assault family violence at any level of court? So you threaten to punch your roommate in the face and now you can never buy a gun again the rest of your life?
Yeah.
I think that's crap.
It'd be better to just hit him, huh?
Well,
at that point,
at that point.
That's my thought or process also.
But how many people are going to know that?
Right.
How many people are going to know that by that conviction, you're taking away his ability to purchase guns for the rest of his life?
Or at least the ability to take it home that day, you know,
Yeah.
at the very minimum, right? I mean,
I just don't think that the punishment fits the crime for that.
Yeah.
You have kids?
Yeah.
I mean, your kids turn 18, 19 years old. They're still living with you, and you're like, I'm about to bust your butt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, now you just committed assault family violence.
Yeah.
Again, if they're an adult. If they're a child, you still can discipline. But still,
Right.
you get the idea.
Wow.
All from verbal, making just a verbal comment that comes off as assault Class C, family violence, prevents you from purchasing firearms in the future. When that law came out, someone from the governor's office came out to kind of explain all that, and it was the various law enforcement agencies, the justices of the peace, they were all in the same room. And so me and Murray, my chief now, and our secretary were all there, and they explained it to me, and I was like, okay, so if a department refuses to enforce that law, is there any sanctions taken against them? Like, we can't get grants, is there anything like that? He was like, no. I was like, all right, cool, bye. And all three of us got up and walked out. We were like, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to take away someone's gun rights just because of a comment they made.
Yeah.
A very benign comment. It's not like they threatened to shoot someone up. I mean,
Right.
it's, you know.
Yeah. I mean, if they're like pull the gun out and they're like, if you say one more thing, I'm going to shoot you. Well, then, you know.
That's why I wouldn't say I wouldn't convict on any of them.
Right.
I would need to hear that case out before I would make a judgment on it. That's not going to be an
Really do
automatic.
some investigation.
Just in this couple hours talking to you, your common sense, you seem fair in the way that you've dealt with the public.
I try to be.
You know?
Yeah.
All right. Well, what an awesome episode. Thanks for coming, Kyle.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. What's your campaign stuff again, if you want to?
My campaign website is www.kylestowersforjp3.com, and Facebook is the same thing, facebook.com/Kyle Stowers for JP3.
Right on. This has been another episode of Two Dudes, One God Pod. Y'all tune in. The next episode is going to be with
Dinks.
Dinks the Puppet. We're,
Very
I mean,
excited about
super
that.
excited. I can't even explain. This guy's got a puppet that has like a TikTok and a Instagram and stuff.
He does Bible study.
And the puppet
That's cool.
like does Bible study, answers really tough theological questions, faith-based stuff, really super cool to see something like that. And I get it. Like I'm like, oh, I get it.
Just grasp it.
Because you can't get mad at the puppet.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
a puppet. So super excited about that. And I'm excited to have you.
That sounds like some straight psychological warfare.
Yeah.
For real, dude.
Well, I mean, hey, look, fire with fire. Spiritual warfare is happening, and I think we're seeing a swing in our nation, and I think it's a good thing. This is a time where boomers are exiting jobs, they're exiting churches, and hopefully they're not just leaving us to hang out to dry. They're hanging around to help us. And it sounds like you've surrounded yourself with some great people, some great men. I think this is time. I mean, it's time for us guys in our late 30s, early 40s to start stepping in.
I agree.
And we're the next wave, and we're trying to bring the guys up that are under us,
Yeah.
It would be an amazing thing.
And I do want to say this. My opponent, I'm not going to mention his name because, sorry, buddy, I'm not going to advertise for you. He's a good guy. I just feel like I am more qualified and have the experience for it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Well, and my opponent's a friend of mine, so I mean, it's really awkward because like we're friends, but now we're also competitors, and I mean, I'm not your typical politician. I'm a lawman. Yeah. I think I would make a decent judge and do a good job at it, but getting there, this has been it's been a journey.
Well, I don't think that you have the usual ego of a politician, and so
What you see is what you get.
yeah, and I don't know that I want a politician looking at my case.
Yeah.
If I got in front of a judge, I would rather a normal, just regular guy like Kyle Stowers.
That's
be
me.
the guy that I walked up to, because when I went in for my ticket in front of Judge Meredith, he's like, "Well, tell me what happened." And I was so nervous, I was like, I was just riding my motorcycle, and I don't. And he's like, "Okay, you want to take defensive driving?" I was like, "Yeah."
Judge Meredith is super fair.
Like,
Well, and Judge Meredith was a cop for 20 years in Tyler,
no joke.
and then became the judge. And here I am when I get elected.
Yeah.
Because March 3rd, 2026 will be the Republican primaries.
Okay.
And you have to vote Republican to be able to vote for me in the primaries. If we have a third person enter the race, then we'll have a runoff election in May, and then the general election will be in November. But so far, there's no Democratic nominee.
Right. Probably won't be for precinct 3.
Not for a
No.
long freaking time.
Yeah.
Praise God.
Yeah. When I get elected, I would take over in office January of 2027. October of 2026 would hit my 20-year mark in law enforcement. And so
Wow.
it would be like continuing the tradition.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, thanks again, Kyle Stowers. See y'all next week. This has been another episode of Two Dudes, One God Pod.